My sister went MIA a few months ago. I was close with my sister, but we fell off over the years. She's not involved and gave up her child to my parents. My parents have custody of my niece pre-tween, and she's living with my parents, who feel as though they're getting too old, enough to the point where they can barely take care of her and attend to her needs. I have 2 children already and don't want any more children. My parents invited me over for a sit-down conversation. They explained how it was hard for them to care for my niece due to their age and suggested that I take her in. I declined as they know I have 2 children and don't plan on having more. My parents, mostly my mother, accused me of being selfish and mentioning that I live in a house with 4 bedrooms. She suggested that I should turn over one of the bedrooms to my niece. I told her that wouldn't happen, as I didn't want more children and did not want the responsibility of more kids. I suggested they should give my niece up to foster care or try looking for the girl's mother. My dad agreed to make the search for her mother the priority, and if that didn't go well, they would then consider putting the child into foster care. I offered to help with the search, but as I was leaving my parents' house, my mother asked me if I would be able to live with myself if my niece were to get put into foster care. I responded to her by saying, "Of course I would. I feel bad, but more kids come with more responsibilities, and that's not something I want in my life, and I just don't feel that adding another one into the mix is a good idea." She proceeded to call me a selfish idiot before walking away. I shrugged it off. Am I the idiot for not wanting to take in my sister's daughter? I couldn't live with myself if I allowed my nephew or niece to live in foster care. However, I find it odd that your mother's putting this on you. Even if it's getting hard on them to take care of her, can they live with sending her to foster care? You are not the idiot since it isn't your responsibility, but you're not exactly the person anyone would strive to be. This sums it up. OP isn't obligated, but, like it's kinda cold, I would give everything to protect my niece and nephew. And even if I didn't feel that way, I couldn't bear to see them disappear into the system. Lately, she's been abandoned by her mother, and now she's about to be abandoned by your parents and rejected by you. Does no one love this poor child? Extended family? Friends? Indeed, someone cares about her. This is heartbreaking. Yeah, Mom up and left. Grandparents are ready to throw in the towel, and Aunt and Uncle can't be bothered. What the heck kind of cold weather family is this? You are the idiot, OP. I understand it's hard. I have 2 kids, and I don't want more. But I agree with your parents. You are being selfish. How could you let a cousin of your children go to foster care when you can care for her? Your parents would surely help you with all 3 children to the best of their ability. It might even be a lighter load for you with that in mind. Why isn't this the girl's dad's problem? Like, why aren't they asking him? Or are they trying to find their deadbeat of a daughter first? Or do the grandparents accept that they've taken on responsibility for the kid and raised her? It's funny that you're also ready to crap all over OP when there are so many other people who have a higher responsibility whom you exempt from that responsibility. OP's parents chose to take on that challenge, but seem to be experiencing an acute FAFO scenario due to their age. That's not OP's responsibility. From a moral standpoint, it does seem a little insensitive to condemn an innocent child to the foster system. Still, there are also 2 other people, the biological parents, responsible for this situation, and there doesn't seem to be enough onus being placed on them to get it together. I, 36 male, was a day 1 adoption. Bio parents never even saw me. My adopted parents raised their family where we were encouraged to be healthy, but not pushed to be crazy about it. For example, eat healthy and walk when you can, but don't necessarily feel pushed to do sports or go to the gym. I do exercise regularly though. Anyway, I've never really had a burning desire to find my bio family, but I received a DNA kit from a coworker as a birthday gift and figured there was no harm. They don't know I'm adopted. What I didn't expect to find was a full-blooded sister. Turns out I have 3 sisters and a brother. She reached out to me first, and after a few months of back and forth and advice from my dad, I drove out to see them over the holidays. When I drove up to the house, I thought I had the wrong address at first. The whole family, siblings, parents, grandparents, etc., were outside waiting for me. They were also all morbidly obese. I don't mean that figuratively. My bio mother's basically Darlene Cates from What's Eating Gilbert Grape, and they didn't get much smaller from there. With that said, I tried to put it out of my mind and focus on the positive of meeting my family. The visit was going okay. It felt a little forced, until dinner. A literal feast was prepared, to the extent that there were more options than I could eat. In the end, I could only manage a plate and a half. The rest of the visit went fine, and I left happy to have met them. It wasn't until I got home that I saw the missed messages. I was accused of being a fat-phobic idiot. Everything from my initial confusion when I arrived to how little I ate was scrutinized. I was told I made everyone feel judged and unwanted. I honestly don't care about people's weight, but I also don't want to pretend I wasn't put off by them at first. In my defense, I wasn't expecting them to be so heavy, but I also think I demonstrated that I wouldn't let myself judge a book by its cover. I don't know. Am I the idiot? No, not the idiot. It sounds like they're the ones with the problem. They might have been mentally surfing on the "it's genetics" thing their entire lives as a reason for being overweight. Seeing you probably brought a harsh reality crash that their issues are from lifestyle over anything else. Sometimes a reality hit like that makes people lash out and blame others, rather than take responsibility for their own actions. I'm sorry for you that they let something that petty be negative for your first meeting of the bio family. This was my first thought as well. There are a lot of people who blame poor genetics on their weight. We can blame genetics on where we put on weight, but it's mostly behavioral decisions that cause weight gain. My ex-mother-in-law would blame genetics, not the extra calories she ate while preparing meals. Being vocal about it was her preemptive defense mechanism. It's funny that she had a very outdoorsy brother and a vegetarian who was beanpole thin. I think it's normal to look confused when meeting bio family after 36 years. You literally have no clue what to expect, even if there had been social media pictures shared ahead of time. Unless you openly called them all fat, eating a plate and a half is a perfectly normal amount to eat. You shouldn't have to force yourself to eat more than what's comfortable to make them feel better about themselves. This really has nothing to do with you and everything to do with themselves. Please don't doubt yourself and do what you must to keep the peace in your life. I was diagnosed with PPD, so I'm not sure if this is playing a part in my actions or not. I've been with my boyfriend for 6 years, and he has a twin son, Jake. I've owned my home for nearly 10 years now. They moved in 2 years ago. Our daughter is an infant. Now, Jake loves his sister. He's always holding her and trying to help, but there's been a massive issue since I had her, with him purposely scaring her, walking up to her and yelling, "Rah!" He thinks it's hilarious when she does startle reflexes, and then laughs when she cries, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare her like that," but continues laughing and purposely trying to scare her, at least 4 times a day. Now, I've always told him to cut the crap. I've told him several times that he's hurting her ears. I've told him several times that it's not funny. And then, not even 3 days ago, I lost my crap entirely and told my boyfriend and him that if he purposely scared my kid again, then they would be evicted and gone from my constant life. I said this because while my boyfriend sometimes corrects his kid, he also tells me I'm overreacting. He said it's natural for kids to think it's funny when babies get startled, and I simply don't understand because I've never been around multiple kids. His son has a half-brother and apparently did the same thing with him when he was a baby. But anyway, I lost it and threatened to kick them out, and at that moment, I truly felt like an idiot because Jake looked sad and just went to his room. But like last night, I stepped out of the room for a minute and my daughter was in her swing. Jake went to sit here, and when I was out of the room, I heard Jake, very loudly and fast, say, "What are you doing?" in a baby voice, and my daughter started screaming immediately. I heard my boyfriend take care of it. And then like an hour later, I went to the bathroom and the baby was in her seat and I heard, "Rah!" followed by the baby crying, yet again. So I told them to pack their crap and get out now. I didn't wait for a response because now I'm trying to calm down my baby. Jake tried apologizing and said it was a habit, and my boyfriend started protesting, saying it wasn't a big deal. I just refused to acknowledge their excuses and told them to leave. My boyfriend sat down on the chair, said he wasn't going anywhere, and that this was his house too. So I said I would leave then and have the cops serve him an eviction notice. He tried begging me to calm down and kept saying, "He's a tween. What do you expect? He's not going to be perfect." I left, and this morning, I filed for their eviction. Everyone thinks I'm being ridiculous here, but Jake refuses to stop, and I'm tired of him purposely yelling in my daughter's face to scare her 4 times a day. Edit. I've also asked Jake why he does this, and he said he thinks it's funny when kids cry. Not the idiot. Yes, he's a tween. He's old enough to know better and to not do it, old enough to listen to instructions. Would he like it if you startled him every morning? No, he's a tween, but he's being an idiot, and this almost sounds sadistic. The fact that he says he likes making babies cry is alarming. I'm wondering what other behavioral issues he has. Jake thinks it's funny to scare a baby and laughs when she cries. I would consider his behavior abusive, especially since he's been told numerous times to stop. Even after being threatened with eviction, he still did it. It almost seems like a power trip to him. Picking on a smaller person with the express interest of scaring them, it might be that he's jealous because he isn't getting all of the attention. Regardless, he needs help. The key detail is that Jake started to scare your baby when you left the room. It means that he's in control of his behavior. It means that he knows that you disapprove. That's not innocent child behavior. He's acting sneaky and duplicitous. Your boyfriend is a crap parent. It's pretty sad that he's taking Jake's side over a defenseless infant. Throw them out and threaten to call the cops on that little idiot if he does it again. That'll scare him. And your boyfriend can't be trusted to protect her. Seems he's barely older than his son. My kid has to sell chocolate-covered almonds as a fundraiser at school. I would rather just give them the amount he'll raise, but that isn't allowed. So I told my wife to just pay for 2 boxes out of the petty cash I keep in my office. I'll take the almonds to work and give them out to my guys for free. My wife says I'm missing the point and should take my son out to sell the almonds. I think that's ridiculous. I think I have better ways to spend several hours than to harass my neighbors trying to get them to buy chocolate. I told her she could either go out and sell the chocolate or take my money. Now she thinks I'm an idiot because I don't value her free time. She's a stay-at-home mom right now. When our youngest is 2, she'll be going back to work. I work 60 hours a week, not including the commute. Now she wants me to spend hours out selling chocolate? No thanks. My free time is valuable too. Am I the idiot for telling my wife to either take my money or she can be responsible for fundraising? Not the idiot. These fundraisers are complete BS. They combine child labor with the pressure to donate. When I was in school, we did a fundraiser run where we had to get family members to sign documents that they would give X amount per kilometer we ran. The money was supposed to go to a new hall for PE. Surprise, surprise. I'm out of school for almost 10 years now, and there are no signs of a new hall yet. It's about spending time with your kid, not making money. You have better things to do for a few hours than parent your child. Sadly, you think your free time is too valuable to spend with your kid. The almonds are an opportunity to teach your child work and reward for the first time, and you'd rather just hand over the money. Something tells me that your kid is the kind who acts terribly at restaurants, and instead of teaching manners, you use an iPad. Because parenting is hard, and you don't feel like making an effort. You are the idiot and the subpar parent. Your wife is your kid's only hope. I agree. The point is to teach your child. Fundraising sucks, but you're teaching your child life skills. Speaking confidently to strangers, accepting no gracefully, handling money, hard work, and accomplishing a goal for the greater good. None of this is about chocolate. Your wife wants you to spend time with your son. Ignore these idiots. I also work a lot, and using the little quality time I have with my son for running from door to door and bothering people would also be very low on the list of things I'd like to do. You were right. Improve your position by pledging to do something else with your kid. No one wants to flog or buy a $10 roll of gift wrap, a $15 box of chocolate-covered almonds, a $20 bucket of frozen cookie dough, etc. The school district my children attended banned these fundraisers a long time ago. I, 34 male, am engaged to my fiancée, Emily, 31 female. Both of our families are lower class, so we have to pay for the wedding by ourselves. We talked it through, and I suggested we have a more chill, smaller wedding and save our money for a down payment on a bigger house. I make significantly more than her. She's a teacher and I'm a doctor. So I told her I would take care of the majority of the expenses, like the venue, catering, and planner, if she just paid for her dress and more minor stuff like that. Last week, her parents hosted a party for us before the wedding, and her mom kept making comments about how she can't believe how small our wedding will be, or that we're not hosting it at the fancy hotel downtown that's just so much better and elegant than what I chose. I even overheard her talking to her sister about how small the diamond is in Emily's ring and that it's embarrassing a doctor won't treat her daughter better. I spent about $5,000, which I thought was fair. She just seemed so hung up on the fact that her daughter's marrying a doctor, but the wedding and the ring isn't on a doctor level. Based on what I know, I think she's a little embarrassed about her family's socioeconomic status and was hoping her daughter marrying a doctor would help her improve her image to her friends and extended family. Throughout all of it, Emily looked extremely embarrassed and awkward and kept trying to tell her mom it was fine. And her mom just said, "You need to learn to stand up for yourself." That's when I just lost it and told her mom she could be uninvited from the wedding if she had so many problems with it and was embarrassed by how cheap I was. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. This sounds incredibly exhausting and selfish. She's ruining the atmosphere of a special day for her daughter and for you. I hope this doesn't foreshadow how she'll be throughout your marriage. She sounds like a nightmare. Be sure to get a prenup OP and set clear boundaries about how much access mother-in-law gets to you, your home, your family, plus assets going forward, so you don't get to a point where mother-in-law sees what's yours is also hers, moves into your house, and stuff like that, or starts expecting you to support her financially. Also, talk to your fiancé and ensure you're on the same page regarding how to deal with her mom. Exactly. Mother-in-law is a gold digger. Get a prenuptial agreement. Don't let love blind you. She may have been pushed to find a doctor to marry. The fact is, she told her mom it's okay. She didn't say it was perfect and put her in her place. She may love you, but if she ever decides she's unhappy with doctor's hours, things will be messy. I admire your small wedding. It should be personal, not a waste of money on a big show for people who are only there for free food and drinks. Good luck.
Skipping nuts won't hurt anyone, but it could make Erin really sick, I told her. Even after explaining and listening to the doctor, Ruby didn't change her mind. She thought exposing Erin to nuts would help her allergies. I was tired of arguing with her and tired of being called a bad mom. Ruby even tried to get Erin to eat nuts, but Erin knew better and always said no. Feeling more and more worried about what Ruby might do, I decided to talk to Michael about it. I'm really concerned about leaving Erin alone with Ruby. I'm afraid she might give Erin food she's allergic to, thinking it will help her allergies, I told him. Don't worry so much, Jessica. My mom might have old-fashioned ideas, but she knows her boundaries, and Dad is always there to step in if things get out of hand. Erin loves being with her grandparents, and we can't just stop her from seeing them, Michael said, trying to reassure me. But Ruby keeps ignoring Erin's allergies. I'm genuinely scared for Erin's safety whenever she's with them without me. We need to talk about this. I can't keep worrying like this, I insisted. Relax, Jessica. There's no need to stop Erin from seeing my parents just because of this small issue. Erin loves being with them, you know. And if you're worried about Mom, I'll talk to her. She'll listen to me, Michael assured me. His words made sense. Erin really enjoyed being with her grandparents, so I couldn't bring myself to stop her if she had ever said she didn't want to see them. I would have respected her decision, but I didn't realize that even Michael couldn't change Ruby's behavior. Things came to a head at Erin's 11th birthday party. Jasper and Ruby were invited, and they said they'd come. Ruby seemed really excited, which made me uneasy, though I didn't know why. When they arrived early, it surprised me because Ruby usually avoided being around me. She gave Erin a big present wrapped in birthday paper and said, "Happy birthday, Erin. Here's your gift. Grandma got you something really special." Erin thanked Ruby, and then Ruby said, "Wow, that's a big gift." "What's inside, Grandpa?" "I have no idea, Erin. Grandma chose it, and she won't even tell me what's in there." "We'll both find out when you open it," Jasper said. "Come on, open Grandma's gift and see what she got you. I bet you'll love it, sweetie." "I'll be your favorite grandma ever," Ruby said excitedly. "I can't wait to see what you got me, Grandma. I'm so excited." "We'll open all the gifts after we cut the cake," Erin suggested. "No, Erin needs to open my gift before cutting the cake. That's why I came early, to give her my special present," Ruby insisted. Despite feeling suspicious about Ruby's behavior, Erin seemed genuinely happy to get such a nice gift from her grandma. The big, heavy package made Erin even more excited, and she couldn't wait to see what was inside. She wanted to start opening her presents once all her friends were there. I agreed to let Erin open Ruby's gift before the cake, as Ruby said it had to be done that way. I didn't want to upset Erin on her birthday, so we went along with it. But little did I know what a disaster it would turn into. Luma and her parents were let down by the one person they trusted. Ruby not only ruined Erin's birthday but also turned everyone against her. When Erin opened the gift, she found a big cake with her name on it. She was happy for a moment, but then she passed out. Michael and I rushed to her, scared and confused, when we saw her throat swelling up in shock. I watched as Michael hurried to get an epinephrine shot while someone else called the police. Knowing exactly who was behind this, I confronted Ruby, demanding answers. "What on earth did you put in Erin's cake? What's in it?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Ruby pretended she didn't know anything, saying, "I didn't do anything, Jessica. It's just a regular cake. I have no idea what's happening. Maybe something you did caused Erin to faint. You've been neglecting her nutrition despite my warnings, and now she's paying the price. Don't try to blame me. Erin was fine just a moment ago, and now she's having an allergic reaction. Tell me what you did to her, Ruby. I hope you didn't mess with the cake. You need to own up to your actions and take responsibility." "Look at Erin, she's turning blue," I snapped back, ignoring Ruby's excuses, focusing solely on Erin. I hurried over with the epinephrine I always kept on hand for emergencies. Although Erin's swelling went down a bit, she remained unconscious. It was clear that she needed to go to the hospital to fully recover. The room was filled with worry for Erin, tears welled up in my eyes, and even Michael looked close to crying. Ruby, who was already in tears, seemed scared. In that moment, I decided to cut open the cake to see what was inside. What I found shocked me to the core. I demanded answers from Ruby, questioning her sanity for putting nuts in the cake. "Ruby, what were you thinking? You ignored my warnings and put nuts in the cake, putting Erin's health at risk. How could you be so careless?" "I only wanted to help Erin, not hurt her. I didn't like that Jessica was so strict about Erin's diet. While it's true Erin might have reactions sometimes, I thought gradually giving her nuts could help," Ruby argued. My frustration boiled over when I confronted Jessica, saying, "Are you crazy? Our daughter is allergic to nuts. She could have died from this reaction." Who gave you the right to decide how to handle her allergies? Look at the mess you've made. I'm Erin's grandma, and I have the right to take care of her. She'll be fine. You're all overreacting. You're just trying to scare me for no reason. I'm sure this is all part of Mila's plan to make me look bad. But listen, Ruby, if things go my way today, you'll be in big trouble. Right now, all I care about is Erin's health, I said firmly. Just then, the ambulance arrived with paramedics. They took care of Erin and took her to the hospital with us following closely. The doctors told us Erin would need time to wake up and would have to stay at the hospital for a day or two. We were all overwhelmed with emotion. I broke down in the hospital, finding comfort in Michael's arms. After calming down, I called Jasper to let everyone know that Erin was no longer in danger. When I hung up, I turned to Michael and expressed my anger, saying, "I'll never forgive Ruby for what she did today. She could have put our daughter's life at risk. I've been thinking about how serious this is. It's unbelievable, something I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it myself. My mom has become someone I don't even recognize anymore. She did all of this just to make me look like a bad mom. She acted like she cared about Erin's happiness, but she never thought about how dangerous it was for Erin. Even after everything, she still says I planned it all. Today showed me how far my mom will go to make you look bad. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner and didn't do more to keep her away from us. I need to protect Erin from my mom's bad influence. I failed as a husband and as a father." Michael was starting to realize how serious the situation was, and Jasper, who had always been a good grandfather, was clearly affected by Ruby's actions. This time, she went too far. Even though she'd gotten away with things before, we weren't going to let her off easy this time. We decided then and there that we couldn't let Ruby keep hurting Erin. Her actions were a threat to Erin's safety, and we couldn't allow her to keep causing trouble in our lives. Ruby was no longer welcome in our family. We were determined to protect Erin and make sure she grew up in a safe and loving environment. It wouldn't be easy, but for Erin's sake, it was a decision we were ready to stand by. Following a heartfelt discussion, my husband and I quickly made a decision while Erin was still in the hospital. It was time to head back home. Jasper, Ruby, and a few guests stayed behind, eager for updates on Erin's condition. This gave us the perfect opportunity to address Ruby's actions. When we got home, 4 hours had passed since the incident. In the living room, we found Jasper scolding Ruby while she seemed indifferent, busy on her phone. The untouched birthday cake sat sadly beside them, a painful reminder of what had happened. Despite my sadness, I held back my emotions. When they noticed us, Jasper and Sophia hurried over. "I just got an update," I said. "Erin is in good hands, and she'll recover soon. Although she's still unconscious, the doctors are hopeful. Thank goodness, Erin will be okay." I was so worried, but it looks like everything's fine. It wasn't even a big deal. "Erin will be fine, and her nut allergy will go away soon," Ruby declared. In that moment, Michael unleashed his anger on Ruby, scolding her for everything she had done. Jasper joined in, expressing his disappointment, and the guests, visibly shocked, stared at Ruby with disapproval. I too was filled with rage. "I've had it with you, Ruby," I declared. "We've given you so many chances to change. Even after your actions put my daughter in the hospital, you show no remorse. This is it. You will never be allowed near Erin or our family again. You're banned from this house. You can't tell me where to go. Your son won't cut me off for no reason. I won't let you keep me from my granddaughter just because we don't agree on how to raise her," Ruby shot back. "No, Mom," Michael replied firmly. "You're not welcome near me or my family ever again. Dad can come here anytime, but not you. He's the only sensible grandparent Erin has. He's done his best to keep Erin safe. But today, you put Erin in the hospital and acted like it was the right thing to do. I can't let someone so heartless be around my daughter." Ruby couldn't believe her own son was turning against her. She could always trust Michael to support her, not realizing he was being rational, unlike her. Even the guests started criticizing her. Ruby felt trapped with no one on her side, not even Jasper. In desperation, she screamed at us, blaming me for setting her up. "This is all your fault, Jessica. You turned everyone against me. I'll never forgive you for this. You should be begging for our forgiveness. Your actions have ruined your reputation and kept you from Aaron. I'll sue you for grandparents' rights. I'll take you to court, and the judge will let me see Aaron. Just wait and see." "I don't need anyone to support me," I responded firmly. "You're not going to have much luck getting grandparents' rights from jail. I'm sure the judge would find it pretty funny to have a criminal asking for visitation after putting her own granddaughter in danger." "What are you talking about, Jessica? Why would I go to jail? I didn't do anything wrong," Ruby protested. "Didn't do anything," I shot back. "What you did is a crime, Ruby. You can be arrested for knowingly exposing a child to allergens. It's considered a form of poisoning. Maybe you didn't realize it, but Michael and I did. We've already called the police on you, and look, here they come now to arrest you." Ruby, in denial, insisted, "No, you're lying. This can't be happening. You can't arrest me for this." Ruby's panicked expression showed her desperation as she begged us not to send her to jail. Tears flowed down her face, and she started to panic. Just then, 2 officers came in and told her she was under arrest. She clung to her hands, begging us not to send her to jail. Michael remained unmoved, telling the cops to take her away, while I gave Ruby a cold look, showing that her deceitful game was over. In a last attempt, she turned to Jasper for help, begging him to do something. "Jasper, please. You can't let your wife get arrested like this," she pleaded. But Jasper stood firm, saying, "When my wife does something truly terrible and shows no remorse, I won't protect her. I've warned you for years to change, and you never listened. Today, you put our granddaughter in danger. I was only trying to protect her, not realizing it would hurt her so badly. Please, Jasper. I'm your wife. You have to help me," Ruby pleaded desperately. But Michael stood by his decision, saying firmly, "Ruby, I've already cut you out of my life. It's the right thing to do, and I plan to do the same tomorrow. I'll talk to a divorce lawyer. I want to end this as soon as possible. I won't stay with someone like you. I'll protect my granddaughter and my kids from you." Ruby was shocked and pleaded desperately, "No, no, no, Jasper, you can't do this to me. I'm your wife." Ignoring her, Jasper told the cops to take her away. Ruby continued crying and begging for help, bringing a tumultuous end to an event that had long concluded. A sense of peace washed over me as Michael, Jasper, and I went back to the hospital after the other guests left, clearly upset by Ruby's actions. They promised to tell everyone what she had done. The next day, Erin woke up feeling much better, but she was terrified of Ruby. Erin cried and begged us to keep her away from her grandmother, saying how Ruby had tried to make her eat things she was allergic to. To help Erin deal with her feelings, we got her a therapist. At the same time, Michael and I started going to therapy together to work on our communication as a family. Having Jasper's support was really important for all of us. With his help, we started to heal and grow stronger as a family. Ruby's life took a sharp turn for the worse after the incident. Her actions caught up with her, and she faced serious consequences. Once her own family found out what she had done, they scolded her and cut ties with her. Even her friends were disgusted by her behavior and stopped talking to her. With no one to turn to, Ruby found herself in a desperate situation, begging everyone for bail money. But she didn't get any help, and Jasper filed for divorce the next day. Ruby was served with divorce papers while still in jail. Receiving the divorce papers herself sent Ruby into a fit of rage. In the following months, Jasper was able to get a quick divorce, taking advantage of state laws with the police report as evidence. Our legal case against Ruby moved forward. Despite the expectation for Ruby to cover Erin's medical expenses, her financial struggles resulted in a lengthy prison sentence as the judge ruled against her. Moreover, we obtained restraining orders to ensure she stays away from our family. With confidence that Ruby won't have the chance to approach us again, we remain watchful. But if by some chance she tries to cross the line, she'll encounter the fierce protection of Mama and Papa Bear, who are determined to do whatever it takes to keep Erin safe.
My friend Frank was picking me up for a 4-day hunting trip, so I said goodbye to my wife. Frank packed his truck with all his hunting gear. Preparation was essential for success. He uncovered the truck bed and opened a drawer behind the cab. "Put your rifle here," he said, pointing to the box. I placed my rifle and gear inside. I got into the cab and glanced back at the house. The door was closed. Frank drove to an old family cabin now managed by his Uncle Bob, who couldn't get around anymore, so Frank took care of it. "He's made major improvements," Frank said, "like better insulation and a more efficient wood stove, so we won't need parkas all the time." "This season, he added a satellite dish for TV and internet," Frank continued. "There's no reliable cell coverage, but you can use WhatsApp over Wi-Fi if you want to call Maeve." "She doesn't expect a lot of contact," I replied, "and I like being out of touch, so I won't mention the internet." We watched SportsCenter during dinner. Later, I read a John Sanford novel while Frank used his laptop. We were sipping our second beers of the evening. We weren't just out for a drunken boys' trip. We wanted to test ourselves against nature and hopefully get some venison. "Oh, crap!" Frank suddenly exclaimed. I closed my book, looking at him. Frank's eyes were glued to the screen as he scrolled. "Holy double crap," he said, then looked at me with doubt on his face. I bookmarked my page. "What's up, Frank? Was he reading the news? Did something happen to Maeve?" His voice dropped. "Oh, crap. You need to see this." He turned the laptop toward me. I got up, crossed the room, and sat down. I expected a terrible headline, but it wasn't a news site. It was a social network. On the screen was a picture of Maeve smiling. I always thought her smile looked evil. I looked at Frank. "What the hell is this?" "Sorry, Matt, it's a dating site," he replied helplessly. "A dating site?" I couldn't believe it. After Tracy and I broke up, I was in a bad place. For months, I did nothing. Eventually, I started using Tinder and other sites to meet women. I stared at him. "Some of these sites skip dating and go straight to hookups." Frank lightened up. "I did get lucky a few times, but there are wives on there too." "Wives?" "Yes, some wives and many husbands looking for fun on the side." I looked back at the screen. Another picture of my wife appeared. My gut clenched. Look, Matt, I've seen a lot of fake profiles. They use women's names and images without their knowledge. Maeve might be a sufferer. I've never seen her on these sites before. I hoped that was true as I examined the profile. The photos were definitely of Maeve. Had they been hacked? One detail stabbed me in the heart, the outfit in one photo. I bought it for her last Christmas. The picture was less than a year old, and I didn't take it. I started reading, "Can you help me with my daddy issues? And I don't mean sugar daddy. I think my dad has always wanted to, you know. But he hasn't yet. I think about what it would be like. Sometimes I imagine my dad now, middle-aged, but still hot. Sometimes I picture him young. I even imagine a virile retired man. Daddy's girl would be happy to help. So if you're clean and fit the description, please send a photo. I'm alone for the long weekend and would love some engaging daddy-daughter time." Below the profile was a box reading, "Current status? Closing soon." I looked at Frank. "Daddy issues? What the hell?" "Maybe this is good," Frank said quickly, seeing my reaction. Some cheating wives aren't unhappy with their husbands. They just have fantasies they're uncomfortable sharing. And maybe it's about trying something new. Or they have daddy fantasies. Frank shrugged. I read further, feeling a lump in my throat. Frank said, "You found double crap." Double crap indeed. Dad's family is from Greece and Italy, so he has a classic Mediterranean look. Dark eyes, dark curly hair, a strong nose with a slight Roman hump. If that's you, I'm looking forward to a daddy-daughter date. If you're 6'5" tall with the build of a long-distance runner, it'll be a hot date. What? Frank responded. "I thought you knew, but clearly you didn't." Not a clue, man, not a clue. We were both confused. Maeve's father, Sean, is a pale-skinned Irishman with rust-brown hair. The description fit me, not him. Then I reached the triple crap. Under Maeve's profile was a box that said, "Join the chat room." I scrolled through the messages and saw one that struck me. "Hi, I've had a lot of free time this month. Do you have a place for me?" Maeve replied, "Oh yes, I can make room. Let me know when I can see you again." "Did you have a good time last month?" "Screw me," I said, stunned. "She's been doing this for a while." I looked at Frank. "Can you tell how long she's been on this site? Maybe she's doing it for money." I recoiled, half expecting to see Maeve on a live feed. Frank took the laptop and navigated the site. "As far as I know, it's just a dating site. It's not set up like she's running a business. It looks like she's doing this for fun." He continued, "She thought once would be enough." I growled, If it really was only once, she's having a whole weekend while I'm away. Whoa, Matt, it's a pop-up site for speed dating, not long-term relationships. Make a date with her, I said. What? Swipe right or whatever and see if she's available this weekend. I want to know if she's really having fun while I'm up here. I could try, he said reluctantly, but I don't fit the description. She wants to see a picture. It hit me. She wants a picture of me. I told Frank my idea to set her up using my picture. He thought it was a good idea. I reminded him it was too late. I could still ruin her fun by writing in the chat room that I'm coming home with a rifle. Frank said it was best not to warn her. She said she's free Friday and Sunday, so she'll make a date for then. Frank and I had taken Friday and Monday off to maximize our hunting time, so I wasn't expected home until Monday afternoon. If you text her now, she'll have time to get her lies together. His voice tinged with anger, and I remembered his wife, Tracy, had left him for her boss. If we go now, you'll catch her in person with proof. He grinned as he looked at Maeve's profile. It was a little over 3 hours home. We discussed our options, preparing Mae for our arrival, following her to her dates, and catching her daddy. The most serious topic was the inevitable divorce. Frank's experience with divorce law was painful, but it would help me. 2 hours later, we were on our third repeat of plans, driving mostly in silence. We pulled onto my street around 10:45, Frank slowing down in front of my house. I told Frank, keep going. He glared but pressed the gas. Turn the corner and stop, I commanded. He did, then looked at me again. There's a car parked across from our house. I don't recognize it. No one parks on the street here at night. She's already started and she's doing it in our house. I reached for the door. Thanks, buddy. You can leave. Screw it, man. We have a plan. We either check it out together or we leave and deal with it tomorrow. No, I need to know now, I insisted. Come on, Matt. If she's alone, it won't prove anything, and you'll still be messed up. I need to know, I repeated. Okay, plan B, he said, driving to the alley behind my house. Frank spoke forcefully. Whether she's alone or not, we look around, then go to my place. My divorce taught me to think hard before reacting. He added, figuratively speaking, remembering my rifle in the truck. Of course, I thought. Frank parked and we walked silently towards my house, staying in the shadows. I lifted the alley gate lever, hoping Maeve forgot to lock it after taking out the trash. She had. We slipped inside. Our bedroom was in the back corner of the house. We saw a faint light behind the curtains. Moving quietly to avoid the leaves, we reached the larger window. I tried to peek inside, but the curtain blocked the view. Frank shook his head. I moved closer and saw a gap in the curtain. Peeking through, I saw Maeve and an older man on the bed. I almost smashed the window but remembered my Leatherman tool. I reached for it but felt Frank's hand stopping me. He signaled for silence and pulled me away. I resisted but eventually fell back. Frank threw his hands up, walked to the gate, and I followed. We walked to his truck. I glanced at the lockbox under the vinyl upholstery, knowing it held rifles, a .357 Magnum, and bear spray. Frank ignored my plea and said, "We've been here too long." He started the engine and drove out of the alley. He pulled into an empty grocery store parking lot a few blocks away. The store had closed and only employees' cars were there. "Why don't I go in there and kick some rear?" I asked, needing Frank's logical voice again. "Because you'd end up in jail," he said. "It's not his fault. Maeve invited him. He probably doesn't even know she's married. I need to proceed cold and cautiously if I want to get out of this marriage to my best advantage," I repeated, echoing Frank's advice. Back at Frank's apartment, he locked all the weapons and bear spray in his weapon cabinet, forbidding me from touching them while I was still in shock. We sat at the kitchen counter and Frank poured us tequila shots, silently toasting to the messed up world. We followed with Pacifico beers. "She's cheating on you with you," Frank said, pondering the situation. "Maybe she's trying to rekindle the spark from when you first met. I wasn't 55 then, and our bed hasn't gone cold. Maybe she loves you and only wants more of you. Maybe daddy is how she explains it." I shook my head, dismissing the idea. Frank continued, suggesting opening up the relationship to control the situation. I gave him a look that said, "Not happening," and asked for another pour. We overslept Friday morning but resumed our plans. Frank drove me to a car rental agency where I got an unassuming sedan. Then I went to a bank Maeve and I didn't use and opened a checking account with money from our trip. I transferred half of our savings and 20% of our checking to the new account. The banker, Jim, reminded me to leave enough money in our joint account for mortgage, car loans, and credit card payments to protect my credit. He helped me set up the bank's app on my phone. Next, I went to a T-Mobile store and bought a dual SIM phone with a top-of-the-line camera. I didn't change our family account to avoid alerting Maeve. Frank convinced me to use our time until Monday to my advantage, despite wanting to confront her immediately. "Sir, is everything okay?" I blinked and realized I was still at the T-Mobile table. The employee was explaining how to switch between SIM cards, and I had been lost in dark thoughts. "Sorry," I said. I banged my knee yesterday and it's causing sharp pain. Oh, that doesn't sound good, she said skeptically. I hope you feel better soon. She continued her explanation and I left the store, limping. Frank and I met at Starbucks and discussed the next phase of our plan over coffee. We then headed back to my neighborhood. We left Frank's noticeable truck in the same supermarket lot as last night, now filled with cars. Frank drove us in my rental to my house. This time my car was in the garage, but Maeve's car and the red Hyundai Accent were gone. We reached the alley and I jumped out and entered through the back gate, which Maeve still hadn't locked. I thought about reminding her to lock it, but then I realized I was lucky she didn't. Entering through the front door might alert neighbors, so I stuck to the plan. Frank took up his position in the supermarket parking lot. We usually got home via Tompkins Parkway and 3rd Street, keeping an eye on the house. I felt a bit paranoid since Maeve was supposed to be at work, but caution was key. I unlocked the back door and entered the utility room. Using a pole, I lowered the attic ladder. As I poked my head through the hatch, the walkie-talkie on my belt beeped twice. Frank signaled that he was in position. He would beep every 10 minutes as a countdown. I jammed the transmit button briefly to confirm our connection. Attic was too generous a term for the cramped storage space under the eaves. I had to crouch to move around. Luckily, the luggage I needed was just a few feet from the trapdoor. I grabbed a canvas gear bag and an old backpack-style briefcase. I avoided taking my preferred bags from downstairs to leave as little trace as possible. I closed up the attic, checking for any prints or marks. Next, I went to the alcove in the living room we used as a home office. I took my passport, social security card, will, birth certificate, and marriage license from the small safe, placing them in the briefcase. There was also $2,000 in cash. I took half. The safe also held gold coins worth about $5,000, but I only took the purchase receipt to avoid raising suspicion. Frank's double beep signaled I'd been inside for 10 minutes. I moved to the bedroom and grabbed black slacks, 2 dress shirts, 2 ties, dress socks, and black loafers, just enough for Maeve not to notice. The hard part was setting up surveillance. At Starbucks, Frank and I had figured out the new phone's time-lapse function. We didn't need sound. Visuals were enough. I hid the phone on a cabinet, peering between my hats, ensuring it captured 80% of the bed. I also adjusted the curtains for better peeking next time, despite Frank's advice against it. Another 10-minute warning from Frank came just as I finished. I moved to the living room. We had taken a trail camera from the cabin. I mounted it on a tall bookshelf to cover the sitting area. It had a motion sensor, a charged battery, and an empty SD card for the 3-day weekend. The bedroom phone would upload photos to my cloud every 6 hours. I left the house with 2 minutes to spare and received Frank's last signal. I joined him in the parking lot, keeping an eye on the corner of 3rd Street and Tompkins Parkway. Next, we went through the KFC drive-thru and sat at Frank's table with food and papers scattered around. We each had notebooks with to-do lists, resembling a hostile takeover planning session. I wasn't hungry, but nibbled on chicken tenders and fries. More interested in the Jack Daniels Frank added to my cola. Okay, you should text her, Frank said. Gotta keep things normal. Maeve knew the cell signal in the mountains was bad and relied on it to avoid awkward calls from me. Our standard practice was to send a text just in case. I found a signal while hiking and managed to send the message. I stared at the screen. What do I say? Give me that, Frank said, taking the phone. Just say what you always do. He scrolled through our past texts. Here we go, the usual. He read aloud as he typed. Hey babe, we got here without any problems. The weather seems good. We'll be out on the trail early in the morning. I'll text again later. XOXO Matt. He hit send and then started dialing another number. Next call is to the lawyer. Frank said Kelly DeWitt had helped him in his divorce and would be good for me too. He introduced me to her, then handed me the phone. Hello? Matt, a pleasant voice said. Frank didn't tell me your last name. Karis, but call me Matt, I said. Okay, Matt. I understand this happened unexpectedly and pretty ugly, she said. Yeah, pretty damn ugly. Excuse my language, I replied. She laughed. Don't worry. If you can't vent to your lawyer, who can you vent to? She said. I relaxed a bit. So, are you my lawyer? Do I need one? I asked. Let's start with the second question. This is about infidelity, right? Are you willing to forgive it and try counseling? She inquired. Hell no, I responded. Good. Are you willing to use the court's online system to file on your own? She asked. That's for no-fault cases, right? I can't file for infidelity there, I replied. Correct. If you want infidelity to affect alimony and such, you need an attorney, she explained. Can you represent me? Frank says you did right by him, I said. Did he tell you the cost? She asked. He did, I confirmed. Our prices have gone up a bit, but I'll charge you the same as Frank. Sound fair? She proposed. Yes. When can we meet? I asked. I can fit you in Monday morning, she offered. I covered the phone and whispered to Frank. She wants to start right away because the case is interesting. He grinned. I told you. Miss DeWitt, that works for me, Should I bring my proof? I asked. Do you already have proof? I take it you just discovered the deception? She queried. Yes, we took screenshots of her profile and saw her with a guy last night. I also installed a camera in my bedroom to catch any other activity over the weekend, I explained. So she advertised online for partners. Interesting, she noted. And she was looking for guys who look like me, I added. Just to clarify, haven't you gained a lot of weight since you got married? She asked. No, I replied. I'm 6 feet tall and 180 pounds. 5 pounds heavier than when we married. I lift weights and run regularly. Good to know. We'll talk more on Monday, she said. Good. That's good to hear. Okay, Matt. After we hang up, I'll open a secure data transfer site and send you the login code. Frank knows the portal address. Send me any evidence you have, and I'll review it before our meeting at 11 o'clock on Monday, she instructed. 11 o'clock Monday? Yes, I'll see you then, I confirmed. And Matt? She added. Yes, I responded. Avoid your wife until we meet. Don't return home. I only practice family law, not criminal law, she advised. Okay, I paused. Okay. After getting the secure code from the lawyer and sending her screenshots of Maeve's profile, Frank checked my phone. My wife responded quickly. Miss you, but hope you're having fun. Happy hunting. Love you, Maeve. Frank typed a message to Maeve saying we hadn't gotten a deer yet and were about to crash for the night. He then put the phone in his safe, explaining it would act like a Faraday cage. I'll press send, but the signal will be blocked. Then I'll turn off the power. When you turn it back on later, it'll look like the message was delayed by a bad signal. You read too many spy novels, I said, but I was grateful. Frank then shared his divorce experience, detailing how he had to cover the mortgage and pay spousal support for his ex-wife, even though she was still seeing another man. I hoped Maeve's infidelity would spare me from such a fate. We applied Frank's knowledge. I closed investment accounts and changed the passwords for all of Maeve's lodgings. I updated contact info on all accounts to my new phone and email. I canceled joint credit cards, except for the one Maeve used for daily expenses, which I lowered the limit on. As the 6-hour mark approached, it was time to check the first data dump to my cloud account. I nearly lost my KFC when I saw my wife's activities. I had programmed the phone to take 6 pictures every 30 seconds, every 15 minutes. The first set showed an empty bed, now made with different pillowcases. Out of 11 picture sets, 6 were blank, and 5 showed her with 2 other lovers. I need to get out of here, I moaned, swallowing bile. Yeah, Frank agreed. Come on, I'll buy you a drink. No, I need to be alone, I said. I don't think that's a good idea, Matt, Frank said. Damn it, Frank, I need to throw up. I need to cry. I need to be alone, I insisted. I understand, but getting caught driving drunk or getting into trouble won't help, Frank advised. I assured him I'd avoid bars and home. Just get on the highway and drive, he suggested. He reluctantly agreed and sent pictures of every daddy to Kelly DeWitt. Before I left, he reminded me to turn on my phone so Maeve would get my message and he could check on me. I thanked him and headed out, promising to stay away from booze. I drove 30 minutes north and back to let night fully set in. The supermarket was still open, so I parked and walked to my house, entering the alley behind it. The back gate was locked, but I climbed over the fence. I crossed the yard quietly and peered through the gap in the curtains. Maeve was now in bed with someone. As I moved toward the back door, my phone beeped with a message and then a call from Frank. I dismissed it and continued. Suddenly I heard, "I see you, idiot," from the darkness. It was Frank standing in the bed of his truck. "Get over here or I'll start honking," he warned. I crept to the fence, making more noise than I liked. I didn't want the neighbors calling emergency. "What the hell?" I hissed. "She's in there with some toy soldier. I'm going to teach him some manners," Frank declared. "Get out of here or I'll call the police myself," I threatened. I climbed over the fence into his truck bed. We drove quietly away and stopped at a bar on Tompkins Parkway, 2 blocks from the supermarket. We sat in a back booth and Frank made me drink a shot of Jim Beam and take a long sip of Bud before letting me talk. "I've had enough. She's turned my house into a strumpet house. I'll never sleep there again, but I'll be damned if I let this disrespect continue," I vented. "Okay then, let's stop it," Frank said, catching me off guard. "What?" I asked. "Give me your phone." He took it, went to my contacts, and called Maeve. He put it on speaker. After 5 rings, she picked up, gasping. "Matt, why are you— what a nice surprise. You must really miss me," Maeve said. "Hi, Maeve. It's Frank," Frank responded. "Frank? Why are you calling? Is Matt okay?" she asked, concerned. "He's had a little accident. It's not too serious, but I might take him down the mountain tonight. Just wanted to let you know," Frank explained. "Oh my God, what happened? Can I talk to him?" Maeve asked, panicking. "Calm down, it's not that bad. He fell and hit his head on a tree branch and is sleeping with an ice pack. If he acts weird, I'll take him to the hospital," Frank assured her. "Do I need to come?" she asked. "No, like I said." Frank ran his thumb over the microphone and dropped the phone under the table. "So there's no reason." "Frank, I didn't hear that last part," Maeve said, confused. Frank stroked the microphone once more. Lie? 1 bar now, Morrow. Then he cut the call off. Okay, Frank said. We've stopped it. I laughed for the first time in 24 hours. After hanging up, I needed to know if the prank worked. Frank was sure Maeve would throw out the soldier and cancel her dates if she thought I was hurt. As we walked from the bar to my house, Frank mentioned that Maeve likely made her visitors park outside the supermarket to avoid suspicion. How considerate of her, I grinned. Shh, I think that's him, Frank said. Ahead, a man in an army uniform was walking toward us. Frank positioned himself between us. Good evening, Frank addressed the soldier, who grunted in response. Frank stopped and turned, making the soldier halt and face us. He looks like you when you were younger, Frank said to me. The soldier furrowed his eyebrows. Then his eyes widened as he looked between us. Young daddy, meet your real husband, Frank said. You like married women, don't you? I growled. Frank took a step in front of me. Down, boy, he said, clearly for the soldier to hear. Didn't you notice any pictures that looked like an older brother when you were at that married woman's house? Frank asked. Now I saw his anger. My buddy had been calm, but facing this situation, his own pain surfaced. She said she's divorced, the guy stammered. Not yet, but soon, I growled. Oh, crap. He started to run. I knew I could catch him, but Frank stepped in front of me. No, man, no. For the second time in 2 days, I almost pushed my best friend aside, but then I saw the misery on his face. I lost Tracy to a cheater. I don't want to lose you too. I relaxed, but still wanted to go after the soldier. You've already lost the main battle, kid. If you attack him, you'll win a small one, but lose the war. It'll just make you look like a fool and could land you in jail. I slumped. Maybe I'll punch him up later, I said. In 6 months, after we give you an alibi. Frank grinned. We sat in my rental car in the store parking lot. Maeve had kicked the soldier out, and Frank believed we had stopped her cheating. Frank was tired of my obsession, but agreed to give me an hour. We spent half at the bar, sipping beers, then returned to the car. A Nissan Sentra with out-of-state plates pulled in, and a guy got out. He read the street signs under the streetlight. He looked like me. A cousin, perhaps. He headed up 3rd Street, and I ran up 2nd, planning to circle back to my house. Frank followed him to prevent me from confronting him. I waited at the corner of Maple and 3rd. The guy checked the house number, then walked to our front door. I hid behind a tree, watching. He rang the doorbell, and Maeve partially opened the door. I couldn't see her, but heard her voice. Too quiet to understand. The door closed after a few seconds, and he knocked loudly. Maeve opened it on the security chain and said, I'm sorry, but it's off now. Please leave before I call the police. The door slammed, and I heard the deadbolt click. The guy stood there, realizing he had traveled far for nothing. What the hell? Hey, cow! He cut his rant short when the porch light next door came on. As the door opened, he spun and walked quickly to the sidewalk. Curious retirees saved me from being seen. I stayed hidden while old Virgil Leonard looked out and saw the man walking away. Once it was clear, I hurried down 3rd Street, resisting the urge to knock on my front door. Frank waited for me around the corner of Elm, and we headed back to Tompkins. In the supermarket parking lot, we heard tires squealing as someone sped away. Anger and driving don't mix, Frank said. Very dangerous, I agreed. Saturday morning, after a restless sleep in Frank's guest room, I reviewed the camera footage from the night before. Maeve had been restless too. With nothing new, I prepared photos of Maeve's encounters to send to my attorney. Should I include the video I took through the window? I asked Frank. Hell no, he replied. What you got from the other camera is enough. Let's not mention going into the house. Think that toy soldier freaked out? I asked. Sending the pictures? Frank grinned. Probably. Then he frowned. I hope he stops showing off before he meets a husband with an unlocked weapon. Thanks for ruining my mood. Let's send Kelly her alarm call. That should cheer you up. Turning on my phone, I saw a dozen messages and missed calls from Maeve. I called her. Hey babe, it's Matt. Sorry Frank scared you. I'm fine now. I'll stay as planned and see you Monday night. Love you. I hit send and the phone rang. It was Kelly. Hey Kelly, didn't expect to hear from you on a Saturday morning. Hey Matt, I saw your new package on the website. I covered the microphone and asked Frank, should I tell her? He nodded. Kelly, I'm putting you on speaker so Frank can explain why Maeve's night ended quietly. Good morning, Kelly, Frank said. Good morning, Frank. What have you been up to? Did I influence you badly with my barbs to Tracy? Frank explained the prank call in text messages, but left out sneaking behind the house or confronting the soldier. I like that, she said when he finished. Are you sure she's canceled the other dates? Wait, she just responded to my last text, I said. Screw the deer. Come home. I need you. I love you. Please come home now. Told you, Frank said. Told him what? Kelly asked. That she really loves him despite all this. Kelly, have you encountered nymphomaniacs in your practice? People with serious mental disorders? She paused. I've had clients and spouses with mental health issues. It's possible. And I'm supposed to accept that? Forgive her if she claims it wasn't her fault. Kelly, you've seen the pictures. How do I stop seeing them whenever I look at her? I don't think you can, Kelly said. If she is diagnosed with a disorder, it will affect the divorce terms. But no judge will deny you a divorce after she planned all this. This conversation forced me to make a decision. Kelly, how quickly can you file the papers? I can't live with her anymore. I understand, she said. I'll have some options ready for us to discuss on Monday. We'll likely need to meet with her and her lawyer before deciding. Okay, but what do I tell her Monday night when I don't come home? You won't tell her anything. I'll handle that. So what should I do now? I asked. I've reviewed your actions and you seem to have it covered. Anything more might backfire. So sit tight, be patient, and don't do anything rash. Frank grinned and said, I'm doing my best to keep him from that, but he keeps trying. By the way, Matt, didn't you say you were still good for 10K? Frank and I froze, wondering if Kelly was referring to my stamina. Yeah, I think I said something like that, I replied cautiously. Good, run along then. Bye, boys. She hung up. Maeve called again and I turned off my phone. Following Kelly's advice, I went to buy new running gear, as I hadn't brought any on the hunt. Frank joined me for a run, but we stopped at 3 miles beyond his comfort zone. I still felt restless, so Frank suggested another way to vent. We put the rifles back in his truck and headed to a shooting range, an hour away, to practice. I shot much more than Frank, so he finished cleaning his rifle first and talked to the range master. They glanced at me a few times. What did he say? I asked Frank on the way back. He asked if I could keep you from shooting anything but paper targets. I said I could. Frank moved my rifle to his weapons safe as soon as we returned to his apartment. The weekend was torturous, with Frank keeping me occupied. We watched Marvel movies, and he limited my whiskey, making sure I had non-alcoholic drinks in between. He managed my correspondence with Maeve, telling her I was doing well and still hunting. On Sunday, he texted her that I planned to spend the day in a tree stand. She's starting to call you an idiot for not coming home, Frank laughed. Wait until she gets served with divorce papers, I replied. A part of me enjoyed the payback, but mostly I was miserable. I loved Maeve and thought she loved me too. Maybe she had a mental breakdown. I wondered if I'd need therapy too. After a 4th sleepless night, I woke up Monday exhausted but resolute about the divorce. Maeve had planned too much and enjoyed it too much. We texted her that we were leaving again that morning and wouldn't be back until late. I apologized for scaring her on Friday and assured her I was fine. We did this from the supermarket parking lot near our house. Her response was quick. You let me suffer all weekend and still can't give up that deer to come back early. Maybe you should just go to Frank's place because I don't want to see you right away. I had to smile at the irony of her suggesting what I had been planning all along. 15 minutes later, I saw her car heading down 3rd Street and turning right onto Tompkins, her usual route to work. I parked in the alley behind our house, not trying to be completely undercover, but avoiding the front to prevent any neighborly curiosity. Once the coast was clear, I climbed the fence and entered through the back door. I retrieved my camera from the living room and my new cell phone from the bedroom. Then I grabbed a suitcase from the 2nd bedroom, which served as a pantry and closet, but was supposed to be a nursery someday. That plan was now shattered, and my heart ached even more. I filled the suitcase with more clothes, gold coins from the safe, and my laptop. I figured she would hear the bad news from Kelly before realizing I had been in the house. Back at Frank's, I pulled the SD card from the camera and plugged it into the computer. Exhausted, I brushed my teeth and collapsed fully dressed onto the bed until Frank called to tell me the videotaping was over. In the living room, Frank was making breakfast sandwiches in the microwave, and coffee was brewing. Ah, the bachelor life. Check out the rest of the camera footage, he said. It'll make you feel better. My laptop was on the coffee table with a shot of whiskey next to it. 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, and I was already embracing the life of a divorced man. Why not? I downed the shot and braced myself to watch the footage. Frank was right. The video from Friday night to Monday morning was more entertaining and informative than expected. After the soldier left, we saw snippets of Maeve pacing the house, phone in hand, talking or texting, trying to check on me. This continued all night, Saturday and Sunday. She looked increasingly irritated as I brushed off her concerns in favor of hunting. I noticed how Maeve cleaned up, putting back items in the living room that had been missing, mostly pictures of me. Frank sat next to me, eating sausage biscuits and drinking black coffee. Damn, I said. She really erased me, didn't she? That guard wasn't lying when he said Maeve filed for divorce. Wait, go back, Frank said. Go back to the end of Friday. What did you see? I asked, rewinding to an earlier clip. Look at her hands, he said. Maeve was pacing the living room, texting with both hands. What? Then I realized. Oh, no rings. I skipped ahead to around 10:30 Saturday morning. Here they are. She played the role of divorcee to the last. Kelly DeWitt, my attorney, greeted me when I arrived at her office. She was tall, in a well-tailored suit with striking features. I focused on her dark amber eyes as she assessed me. 6 feet, 180 long-distance runner with some muscle. I guess I can believe the rest of your self-description, she said. Thankfully, she phrased it as a statement. Have a seat, Matt. I'm sure it's been a rough weekend. How are you? Kelly asked. It's been hard. Anything new from Maeve? I had sent her some of Maeve's messages, including the one asking me not to come home. This just came in while I was parking. I handed her my phone. Baby, please ignore my last message. Yes, I'm mad, but I need you home. I'm dying here without you. Please, Maddie, Kelly read aloud. Okay, Kelly said. It doesn't seem like your wife did this to get rid of you. I have a feeling once she knows you found out, she won't try it again. I can't pretend this didn't happen, I said. No, of course not, but if she explains and promises it won't happen again, could you forgive her? Kelly asked. Kelly raised her hand to stop my angry response. I have to ask about reconciliation, Matt. The judge will insist, and I get the feeling you still love her, she continued. I do, but I don't see how I can. You saw pictures and clips, but you didn't sit through it all, I said. Kelly didn't need to ask what I meant. She simply said, I understand, but as a family lawyer, I have to see if the family can be saved. Maeve will likely fight to keep you two together. But no, she can't force you into marriage counseling. I'm sure not in this case. Okay, tell me your plan, and let's work out the property and financial details if you want to file quickly, I said. Since this is for infidelity, do I still have to give her half of everything and pay alimony since my income is double hers? I asked. Kelly spent the morning answering these questions and more. By 1 p.m., with deli sandwiches delivered, she had sketched out a plan to minimize the damage to my finances and position. It was time to pull the trigger, and I nodded to Kelly. She put my phone on speaker and called Maeve. The call was answered before the first ring ended. Maddie, where are you? Are you coming home? Are you okay? What the hell are you playing at, idiot? Oh God, baby, I need you. Where are you? Maeve said frantically. Mrs. Karras! Mrs. Karras! Kelly almost yelled to stop Maeve's rant. What? Who is that? Oh my God! She screamed. Where's Matt? What happened to Matt? Mrs. Karras, my lawyer said louder. Using my phone to call Maeve wasn't the best plan, but we feared she'd ignore any other call. Mr. Karras, Matthias is fine. He wasn't hurt at all. He's fine, Kelly assured her. But Frank said, who are you, and why are you calling on Matt's phone? Maeve asked, confused. Mr. Karras gave me his phone to ensure you'd answer. I assure you he's fine. Mr. Spinner's reports were a hoax. I apologize for the fear they caused, Kelly explained. Kelly stuck her tongue out at me. A prank? What's going on? Who are you, and why are you calling my cell phone, Matt? Maeve demanded. Mrs. Karras, I'm using Mr. Karras's phone with his permission, and this call is being recorded. Do you mind? Kelly said as Maeve's voice trailed off, still angry and puzzled. Why is it being recorded? Who are you? Maeve asked. My name is Kelly DeWitt, an attorney with Green Family Law in Springville. Your husband, Matthias Karras, has hired me to represent him in the dissolution of your marriage, Kelly stated. The dissolution? Maeve repeated, stunned. Yes, Mr. Karras wants the dissolution to be quick and private, Kelly confirmed. A sordid affair? I imagined Maeve stunned, able only to repeat Kelly's words. Yes, Mrs. Karras. Normally we'd serve you with divorce papers, but Mr. Karras hopes to reach an agreement outside of court. Please contact your attorney as soon as possible, Kelly instructed. Attorney? Maeve echoed. Yes. Do you have a pen and paper? I'll give you my contact information, Kelly offered. No, I don't, Maeve replied. I'll send you a message with my contact information. After that, the phone will stop working, and you won't be able to contact Mr. Karras through it, Kelly explained. But I need to talk to Matt. This is all wrong. We love each other. Is he there? I need to talk to him, Maeve pleaded. I'm sorry, Mrs. Karras, but Mr. Karras isn't ready to talk. Have your lawyer contact me. Goodbye, Kelly said firmly. Kelly hung up as Maeve began to speak. That went well, Kelly said, sending a text with her office information to Maeve's phone before disconnecting it. Her words were sarcastic, but sounded sad. Are you okay? I asked, feeling the odd role reversal. I like protecting spouses from misuse, but cases like this make me sad and tired. There's something strange going on here, Matt. I think you're doing the right thing, but I don't sense vindictiveness from your wife. For whatever reason, maybe an uncontrollable dependence, she's blown up her life. And neither of you will be happy. Screw me, I'm not even 30. Have I already seen the last happy day of my life? Kelly shook her head vigorously. No, it sucks now, but it's not the end. We'll connect you with a therapist. If you take counseling seriously, you'll recover faster. Frank waited too long for counseling, and it cost him unnecessary pain. Don't make the same mistake. Yeah, it cost me, Frank confirmed a few hours later, as we ate chicken wings, shrimp, and Bloody Marys at a downtown sports bar. I thought therapy was just psychological nonsense, but I ended up wallowing in my own mess like a clogged toilet. You talked to me for a while, and you could have talked more, I said, trying to ignore his metaphor. I know you had my back, but seeing you and Maeve so happy hurt more than it helped, at least until I got outside counseling. But why? I asked. Because you and Maeve seemed perfect, and it made me grieve for what I'd lost. Realizing I'd been living a lie for so long hurt even more. I sipped my drink, unsure of what to say. After seeing Kelly's therapist, I could finally see you two as a sign of hope, instead of a reminder of my past. And now it's all turned out to be another lie, I said. Screw me, he muttered. Screw me, I repeated, raising my glass for a toast. We clinked quietly and drank deeply. Hey, Matt, have a seat, Kelly DeWitt said, this time in a small conference room with papers spread out on a table. It was Tuesday afternoon, and I had taken the day off after updating my work information on Monday. I spent most of the day at Frank's, searching for a new apartment since I couldn't live in my ruined house. I ran 5 miles in the morning and another 3 before meeting Kelly, hoping the endorphins would help me stay calm. Kelly had talked to Maeve that morning, and she said I needed to hear what Maeve had to say in person. When the receptionist led me to the conference room, I half expected to see Maeve and her lawyer waiting. Kelly laughed lightly, waving me into the empty room. No, just us. We needed space to work. As I sat down, she added, Maeve wanted to be here to explain, but if this were a TV show, it would be a classic showdown. Glad it's not television, I said. Kelly gave me a wicked grin. As I thought about our meeting the day before, I realized I was glad she wasn't like Maeve at all. I think you'll be surprised, Kelly said, but it would be better if you heard it from Maeve. Stop escalating the situation, I said. Hear what? That she did it all for you, Kelly replied. I'm sure she got more than she expected, I said, shocked. What the hell? I barely stopped the profanity. The smirk disappeared from Kelly's face, and she placed her hand on mine as they clenched into fists on the table. She claimed I was some kind of willing, betrayed man, I added. My voice rose, and I started to stand, but Kelly grabbed my wrist. No. Oh, God, Matt, no, I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd take it that way. I'm really sorry, Kelly said, trying to calm me. I relaxed slightly and stared at her. Maeve didn't say that. She's very upset that you've found out and left her. Left her? I hadn't thought of it that way, but yes, I admitted. Then what did you mean by, she did it all for me? I asked. The baby, Kelly said quietly. It hit me. We'd been trying to have a baby for 11 months. She found someone like me to get her pregnant since I hadn't succeeded yet. She wanted a baby desperately, and I hadn't realized she was willing to go to such extreme measures. She was doing this to get pregnant? I asked, seeking confirmation. Yes, Kelly replied, pushing some pages toward me. It was a lab report from 3 months ago, ordered by Maeve's gynecologist. It took me a moment to realize that Dr. Wellborn had provided 2 samples from patient 25473, both with low counts. Am I patient 25473? I asked. Kelly nodded. But how did she get the samples? I asked, seeing Kelly's embarrassment for the first time. She secretly took samples for analysis when you couldn't get her pregnant after 6 months, Kelly explained. Instead of talking to me, she found guys who looked like me and accepted their donations the old-fashioned way, Kelly continued. She said your insurance didn't cover art, which is expensive, and you'd already used your savings to buy the house. I leaned forward, my forehead on the desk. That means I won't have to pay child support if her plan works, right? Kelly looked even sadder. You'll still need to get tested since you're low, but not zero. Why not? What's wrong? I asked. Maeve realized she was exposed and you're threatening divorce, so she went to her OBGYN for the morning after pill, Kelly said. But today isn't the morning after. She was with her first guy Thursday night, I said, confused. Dr. Wellborn confirmed it. Maeve asked her to call me, Kelly explained. Maeve had gone to extreme lengths to conceive, but now, knowing I wouldn't raise someone else's child, she was erasing the mistake. It was all so sad. Then I realized another detail. She did this just before my hunting trip. She was preparing to get pregnant and would have been with me on Monday to reinforce the idea. God knows what diseases she picked up, I said. Kelly held my hand reassuringly. STDs are a concern, but Maeve was thinking about that too when she made the appointment. Matt, after our meeting yesterday, I reviewed the security footage and noticed something strange at the beginning of her visits. She'd often look at the smartphones of her visitors. She did this a month ago too, Kelly said. Oh crap, I muttered. What? Kelly asked. She did it a month ago too. I still have to take the test, I said. Uh-huh. She admitted it was the first and only time. When that didn't work, she tried again during your hunting trip. She planned to return to Fidelity afterward, Kelly explained. I thought we agreed we wanted at least 2 or 3 children, I said, shaking off the heartbreaking thoughts. Did you say something about the camera footage and STDs? Yes. Did you notice how she often checked her visitors' smartphones shortly after they arrived? Kelly asked. Yes, I figured she was checking their invites, I replied. She was checking their current STI and HIV test results, Kelly clarified. Disbelief showed on my face. They get tested regularly? Yeah, they do, Kelly continued. So what? I asked Frank later over pizza and beer. Do you get tested regularly and carry the results? Actually, yes, I do. I always use protection and I carry the labs with me. If I start dating again, I'll probably have to do that nonsense too, Frank said. When you start dating again, he emphasized. But yeah, I'd recommend it. Man, I gotta say, he continued, I'm surprised Maeve's lawyer let her spill so many details early in the negotiations. She doesn't have a lawyer yet. Kelly found her outside her office this morning and insisted on talking. Kelly advised her to get a lawyer, but Maeve was convinced that once I knew the truth, I'd call off the divorce. And how did that work out? He asked Riley. Kelly said Maeve believed her plan made so much sense that I would come home tonight. Frank handed me another beer as we sat in his apartment. I planned to stay there until deciding if I could live in the same town as Maeve, let alone the same house. A week and a half later, I was back in the conference room at Green Family Law. Kelly and I sat on one side, Maeve and her attorney on the other. Mr. Karras, Miss DeWitt, said the balding lawyer, we have two problems. First, Mrs. Karras wants to stay married. Second, if reconciliation is impossible, the proposed agreement is insufficient. It suggests a 50-50th division of property, but doesn't include all marital assets, and the proposed spousal support is too low and short-lived. Kelly tapped my foot under the table, signaling, I told you so. I acknowledged it faintly. Mr. Philpott, Kelly interjected, Mr. Karras has agreed to pay 60% of your fees as part of the assets. This shows remarkable fairness for a man who has been wronged. The judge will take note of this if we can't resolve these issues here. I wanted the case over with and for Maeve to be treated fairly, not to get half of everything but to avoid living in a disadvantaged area or moving in with her parents. She refused to get a lawyer thinking we shouldn't divorce. With her salary, she could only afford a subpar lawyer. So I asked Kelly to find someone decent for her. And, Kelly continued, what about my client's quality of life? You've seen the evidence, Mr. Philpott. Imagine what he goes through every night with those images in his head. It was dramatic, but Kelly wasn't exaggerating. I struggled with therapy, although Kelly and Frank assured me it would help. Ironically, the psychiatrist's consultation was covered by my health plan, unlike Art, which could have prevented all this. I'm so sorry, Maddie, so sorry, Maeve sobbed. Philpott squeezed her hand again. Miss DeWitt, Philpott said, while I sympathize with Mr. Karras, our state's laws don't consider these matters in dividing marital property or awarding spousal support. Mr. Philpott, Kelly snapped, if your client doesn't agree to the negotiated offer, we won't file it. If we go to court, she placed her hand on a thicker pile of papers. This petition will be filed on the grounds of your client's infidelity. The settlement terms here are much less generous. I saw his hand tremble as he wanted to open the package, but held back. Okay, I'd gotten Maeve fair representation. While making this case public would embarrass Mr. Karras, it would be even worse for Mrs. Karras, especially since we will subpoena the names of all participants in her affairs and conduct a paternity test on the child she tried to conceive with them. Maeve gasped, then made a sound of deep sadness. Okay, stop it, shouted an indignant Philpott. There's no need to be so rude, Miss DeWitt. Mrs. Karras took measures to avoid conception despite wanting a child with Mr. Karras, a desire he shared. My baby, our baby, I whispered. Kelly placed her hand on mine and pressed her foot against mine. But it would be ours, Maeve exclaimed. It would be ours, yours and mine. The lawyers agreed to a short break. Kelly took me to her office while Philpott led Maeve outside. As we reconvened, Philpott continued. Mrs. Karras took drastic measures forced by her husband's stubbornness to prevent conception, even though it could have been Mr. Karras's child. Kelly stood firmly, sensing my anger. Her next words were softer, directed at Maeve. We understand Mrs. Karras made a difficult decision and did the right thing under the circumstances. Mr. Karras and I recognize the pain she must be feeling. Kelly then turned back to Philpott. Unfortunately, it hasn't been determined if your client's intervention was successful. She may still be pregnant. We need to address this threat at the root. I glanced at Maeve, who looked pale, fearing she might faint. Kelly continued, The agreement states any such child would not belong to my client. Mr. Karras will take a paternity test to confirm this. If we go to court, we will demand the same from any potential fathers. Kelly wanted to add, if she decides to carry the baby, but I vetoed that. There was enough tension already. Maeve pressed her lawyer's hand. They had discussed their next steps. All that aside, Philpott said, we'd like to return to Mrs. Karras's first position, not to file for divorce. Instead, She and her husband should go to counseling and find a solution to start a family. Why couldn't she have done this from the beginning? I almost howled. Why not just tell me instead of cheating? Mr. Karras? Matt. Voices overlapped before I slammed my fist on the table. I stared at the surface and said through clenched teeth, I'm already in counseling. My therapist says the why question is like a funnel. I can't heal until it fills up. He suggested I ask Maeve to join a session, but now I need to know why you brought strangers into our bed instead of telling me about the problem. My client didn't, Philpott began, but Maeve interrupted. I didn't want to hurt you by telling you that you couldn't give me a baby. You're so into your physicality, and I didn't want you to think you weren't enough, insisted Maeve. Oh my God, am I really such an idiot? I asked, wondering if I'd missed a character flaw. No, she repeated. I said it wrong. She took a breath. If we could afford IVF, I'd have told you, but we couldn't. We wanted to start a family now. So it was about the donor, not breaking out of the monotony of marriage. Exactly, Maeve exclaimed. Why would I ever want to run away? So you didn't enjoy it? She flinched, but continued. Don't you see? Yes, I called them folders on my page, but they were really all you. Any memories were connected to you, like in those multiverse comic book movies you love. I could add the memories of doing it with you, younger or older, to the wonderful memories I have of doing it with you now. And when you thought back to those encounters, feeding the child one of those alternate selves had put inside you, you always thought of your real self, right? She grimaced at my words, but continued. Yes, always about you. I turned to look at Attorney DeWitt, who raised her eyebrows in question. I nodded silently. She reached for the other folder, circled in red, the nuclear option. As I spoke, Kelly slowly pulled out a series of photos and placed them in front of Maeve and her lawyer. The 8x10 color photos were from the front and back cameras in the house, as well as a video I had taken Friday night while spying. Maeve's face turned from gray to green, and she barely made it to the trash can before throwing up. Our house on 3rd Street sold quickly. Despite owning it for less than 2 years, it had appreciated enough to pay off the mortgage and cover moving expenses. I moved from Frank's apartment to a work-friendly condo, and Maeve moved back to her hometown, though she managed to get a small apartment instead of moving into her childhood bedroom. She wasn't pregnant, and she found a decent job that allowed her a reasonable lifestyle. While the child support I paid for 5 months wasn't a huge strain, I was glad she wouldn't be destitute when it stopped after the 6th month. She brought this misfortune on both of us, and her betrayal still haunted me. She was the love of my life, and I knew her remorse and regrets were genuine. Her last letter said she still hoped for reconciliation, but that seemed unlikely. Therapy helped me dump anger and despair, and I no longer saw myself as a huge loser facing decades of dull monotony. As for Tracy, she ended up as a barista at a Starbucks, blaming Frank for her troubles, though there was no evidence to support it. The police cleared him, with witnesses and surveillance footage proving he was at a Foo Fighters concert that night. Looking ahead, once I pay the last amount of spousal support, I'll have fulfilled all my obligations from the divorce, and Kelly DeWitt will no longer be my attorney. When she found out I attended an art exhibit and enjoyed it, she said she wished our first date had been at the gallery too. I was packing for our annual fishing trip, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. This trip, a long-standing tradition with my closest friends, felt different this year. Normally, it was a group affair with us and our wives, a testament to our inseparable bond since grade school. However, changes were afoot. Kenny had to miss the initial part of the trip due to a business obligation, causing his wife Pam to also delay her participation. Then, Don had to cut his trip short for a meeting, leading his wife to stay behind. Once Becky learned that she'd be the only wife on the trip from the start, she opted not to join either. The alteration in plans was a letdown. Our trips were known for strengthening our friendships and spicing up our marriages, filled with laughter and memorable moments. Now it seemed like a shadow of its usual self. Despite my excitement for the trip, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss, particularly missing the intimate moments with Becky. Yet, the week leading up to the trip, Becky and I shared a passionate connection, a fervor that was both exhausting and deeply cherished. It was a bittersweet prelude to an altered tradition. For most of the year, our intimate life had settled into a routine that could be described as more functional than exciting, happening maybe twice a week. This was enough to meet our basic needs, but lacked the fiery passion we had in the early days of our marriage. Back then, our desire for each other was relentless, and we took advantage of every moment and place we could find for intimacy. However, about 5 years ago, this intensity began to wane, and our frequent encounters became less frequent, dwindling to just a few times a week. Becky seemed more and more reluctant, leading to frustration and occasional arguments on my part. Over time, though, I came to terms with this shift in our relationship, learning to handle my disappointment on my own. This context was on my mind that Thursday evening as I sat in the den, trying to relax with a beer after finishing my packing. Becky was upstairs, putting the kids to bed, a routine that had become as much a part of our lives as our changed intimate dynamics. After a while, I heard her footsteps as she came back down and went into the kitchen. She then joined me in the den, a glass of wine in her hand, and a look of concern on her face. "Honey," she began, her voice laced with seriousness, "we need to have an important talk. I understand this might upset you, but please hear me out before responding. I promise to address any questions you have afterward. I should have brought this up months ago, but I needed to gather some information first." Her tone was earnest, hinting at the gravity of what she was about to share. I'm not sure why, but I felt a surge of fear. Becky's demeanor was apologetic and fearful, yet her resolve was unmistakable. It was clear she was about to discuss something serious. After taking a deep breath and another large sip of her wine, she continued, "I know our intimate life hasn't been satisfying for you in the past few years, honey. Frankly, I haven't found much joy in our moments together either. Davy, I love you deeply, but, well, honey, you no longer stir the same excitement in me that you once did. And David, I want to remain your wife. You're an excellent father, a fantastic provider, and a true friend, but I'm seeking more than what you can offer me physically." I could feel anger starting to boil inside me. What was she implying? I thought she had grown distant, but what was the significance of the past week? I was certain I had made a significant impact. Just as I was about to interject, Becky raised her hand. "David, you promised to let me finish speaking before you responded." I bit down hard, forcing myself to lean back into my chair, trying to temper my rising frustration as she went on. "David, there's someone I've known for a while who captivates me in a way I cannot ignore. It's not just about sex. No, it's about making love in a way that I feel we can't anymore. I didn't want to go behind your back. I will still be here for you, but I need to be honest about my needs. Being with him makes me feel alive, reminiscent of how we felt at the beginning of our marriage. It's something I can't seem to get enough of." I jumped from my chair and began screaming at her. "You cheating witch! How could you?" Becky stood and jumped in front of me. She pushed me back and I fell into my chair. She stood over me and continued, "Shut up! I told you that you wouldn't like what I had to say, but you promised to listen to me before you said anything. Now shut up and listen." I found myself rooted to the spot, stunned, as Becky loomed over me, her gaze fierce with a determination I had never seen before. She went on, her words like a cold, unwelcome breeze. "I've spoken with Don about the divorce laws here, and you need to understand the reality. Divorcing me won't be in your favor. You'd end up losing significantly. I'd be entitled to a large portion of your income for alimony and child support. The courts would likely grant me custody of the kids in the house to ensure their stability. Half of our savings and your retirement fund would also be mine. You'd be left with barely enough to live on, let alone maintain the lifestyle you're accustomed to. It would mean our children growing up in a broken home, dealing with all the associated difficulties. For your sake and for the kids, you need to come to terms with my decision. Despite everything, I still hold love and respect for you. Our life won't change much on the surface. I'm not cutting you off entirely, it's just that I'll be absent now and then, maybe even taking trips with him for the time we need together." As her words sank in, a mix of disbelief and anger welled up inside me. Watching Becky return to her seat, a silence fell over the room, heavy and tense. After a moment, I managed to find my voice, a mix of hurt and outrage barely contained. "I can't believe this. How could you do this? After everything, to come to me with such a betrayal. How long has this been going on? Who is he?" Becky looked at me with some anger and said, "Using mean words won't solve anything, honey. I hope you can move past your feelings and we can continue living as we have for the past few years. I won't tell you how long this has been going on or when or where it happens, and I definitely won't tell you who I'm intimate with. It's none of your business, and if I catch you snooping around, I'll have to take actions you won't like. I've been seeing someone else and I'm done hiding it. I need to be honest because the sneaking around is too much. I want to be upfront about when I go out so you can take care of the kids. But I won't tell you who he is to avoid trouble. If you try to do something bad to him or me, it won't end well, especially for our kids who need you. Just know, if you try to hurt us, there will be consequences." Once again, I sat there shocked at how calmly Becky laid out her information. She seemed so sure, so prepared. It was clear she had been planning this moment for a while. Despite my thoughts and comments, she had an answer for everything. I said, I should probably call the guys and let them know I won't be going on this trip. We need to sort some things out, and I have a lot on my plate. I reached for my phone, but Becky grabbed my hand. Becky looked me straight in the eyes and said, No, you're going on this trip. The kids will stay with your parents as we arranged. I don't plan on being alone for the next 2 weeks, and I don't want you around to cause any trouble or try to find out who I'll be with. You need this time away to process everything. I've made sure you'll actually go on this trip, and you won't like the consequences if you don't. You'll regret it if you change your plans now. My friends and I have everything covered. We have sources in town and almost everywhere you might go. If you try anything to find out about my lover or disrupt our lives, I'll find out, and you'll face serious consequences. You have to accept that my plan is solid, and it's what's best for me. If you cooperate, I'll make sure you don't have a miserable life. You'll continue living much like you have been. Becky went over to the desk and took out a thick envelope from her drawer of papers. She came back to me and handed it over. Here, so you'll believe me. We made a written report of all your actions for the past month. Read it and you'll see we have it all down. We're aware of everything you do, and if you try to interfere with our plans, we'll know, and I won't go easy on you. Now I'm heading to bed. If you want some action tonight, come up. You'll see not much has to change unless you start causing trouble. I sat there in shock. Who was this woman? And what happened to my wife? I thought I knew her, but now I discover she's conniving and unfaithful. I watched her go upstairs, her hips swaying seductively. She knew she looked amazing and she was using it tonight, but for once, it didn't faze me at all. Finally, I opened the envelope and started reading. I was shocked. The report on me was incredibly detailed, capturing things I'd forgotten until I read them. It seemed like someone had been monitoring my every move, noting even minor incidents like spilling something on my shirt. It documented my glances at other women, something natural for anyone. The thoroughness of the report made me wonder if someone wealthy or connected was behind it, given its detail and scope. The report contained private details, including conversations I thought were private. This made me question if I was being bugged. As I considered my next steps, particularly how to leave my cheating wife without losing out in a divorce, I realized I needed advice. My lifelong friends, who shared a complicated history with me and Becky, seemed like the go-to, but then a dreadful thought struck me. What if Becky was involved with one of them? Seeking their counsel could backfire if the traitor was among them, sabotaging my plans before they even started. Just as I was deep in thought, Becky called out from the top of the stairs, provocatively suggesting I join her in bed rather than mulling over things alone. She then returned to our bedroom, leaving me to consider my next move in this complex situation. I never did go to bed. I spent the night on the couch in the den. Becky woke me up when she started making breakfast. She was mad and made sure I knew it. Get your sorry butt up, Dave. You need to clean up and get ready for work before the kids notice you didn't sleep in your own room last night. When you come back in 2 weeks, I expect you to act normal. If you mess things up in the family, I've already warned you about the consequences. I'm willing to meet your needs sometimes, but I expect you to do your part too. Just so you know, if you find another woman, I'm filing for divorce. I could feel the rage building up inside me. I yelled, "What's going on? You can mess around and think it's fine, but I can't do the same? Not that I want to, but why is it okay for you and not for me?" Becky smirked and said, "Come on, Dave. We both know you're satisfied with what you're getting from me now. If you go out looking for someone else, it's just to get back at me. I only seek outside the marriage because you're not meeting my needs as a husband. If you could give me what I need, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere, and I expect the same from you." I stammered. I was so mad I could barely talk, but I finally managed to respond. "I can't believe this. You never once talked to me about needing more or wanting to try something different in bed. You never asked me to do anything we don't normally do. How was I supposed to know you wanted something else if you never told me? I always made sure you were satisfied. Most of the time, you had multiple orgasms before we were done. How could I know something was missing when you acted like everything was fine and I was happy?" Becky stood there, then said, "Well, if you're asking now, you're really clueless, huh? It's not just about quantity, dear. It's about quality. You never learned how to please me, and I realized you never would. So I started getting what I needed elsewhere. Now, get dressed. I'm tired of hearing you complain." I went upstairs and went through my usual morning routine. We had a quiet breakfast, and when our son Sean asked what was wrong, I started to explain. But Becky interrupted, saying, "Your father's just dealing with a little issue. He'll be fine after his vacation." She shot me a glare before focusing on her breakfast. At work, I decided to ignore some of Becky's advice and canceled my trip with the guys. We were supposed to leave straight from work and meet at our favorite Denny's to drive together. I had a spacious F-150 truck, so we'd load our gear into it. Roger would ride with me, and Don would take his car since he had to return on Wednesday. I talked to Roger, explaining that something had come up, and I couldn't make it. I offered to let him use my truck to haul the gear. Roger exclaimed, "Oh, Dave, that's not happening. I just spoke to Becky, and she warned me you might try this. She mentioned you've been stressed lately, but she checked with your secretary and confirmed you have nothing important scheduled. I promised her I'd ensure you take this trip. If I have to, I'll come find you. You're coming with us, and you're going to enjoy yourself." I started to object and refuse outright, but then I felt a twinge of fear. What if Roger was... No, Becky said she was leaving this weekend and Roger was joining me. But wait, Kenny was staying home and coming up midweek. Could it be him or someone else? I was stuck. I needed to think more and make plans. I wanted to buy some surveillance equipment, but how? From the report I read, Becky and her friends tracked my credit card purchases, phone calls, and even cash withdrawals. They could spot unusual spending overnight. I was sitting at my desk, lost in thought, when Becky called. As soon as I answered, she launched into a tirade. "David, I told you to go on your trip, and it's not wise for you to try to snoop into my affairs. Roger just informed me that you tried to back out. This is your final warning. Don't mess with me, or you'll lose everything and never see your children again. Do you understand this time?" She hung up abruptly, leaving me stunned once again. Roger had betrayed me. Did that mean he was involved, or was he genuinely concerned for me? Come to think of it, my old friends didn't seem as close as they used to be. It felt like they were now Becky's friends, and I was just tagging along. Could it be? Nah, not all of them. Anyway, I decided to go on the trip and met the guys at Denny's. While they were joking around, I sat gloomily. Finally, Don asked me what was wrong. I hesitated for a moment, then said, "Becky has some crazy idea, and I don't know how to deal with it. I can hardly believe she meant what she said, but if she did, my marriage is in trouble." Roger glanced at Don and remarked, "You know Becky's style, Don. She rang me up earlier today saying Loverboy here was trying to bail on our trip. She mentioned he's been on edge and hard to deal with lately and could use this time off to clear his head. I assured her we'd ensure he joined us and had a good time." Don chimed in, "Yeah, I've noticed his moodiness too over the past few months. He hasn't been as lively with us. A little adjustment in attitude won't hurt. And we can help with that. I've got beer and his favorite whiskey in my car." Turning to me, he added, "Nothing used to stop us from enjoying our cabin time. Sure, the ladies won't be there this time, but hey, more drinks and stories for us." We headed out, driving to the fishing spot by the stream. It was a short 2-hour ride, and we arrived in time for some serious drinking before bed. The next morning, both guys insisted on fishing, so we set off. The fishing helped me forget about the past few days, but thoughts of Becky crept back as we returned to the cabin. I couldn't believe she meant what she said, but it lingered in my mind. Instead of focusing on what I needed to do, I let the guys convince me to keep drinking with them. Later, during supper, as we continued drinking, Don looked at me and asked, "Okay, Dave, spill it. You look like you lost your best buddy, but I'm still here. What's eating you?" I thought, why not? If I didn't talk to someone I trusted, I'd lose it. These guys were trustworthy. We'd been pals since school started. I spilled the beans to Don and Roger about my marriage's declining bed life over the last 3 years and Becky's bombshell from Thursday evening. After I finished, Don looked at me and said, "Wow, Dave, are you sure that's what Becky said? I can't believe she'd even think something like that. We've known her for years, and she's the sweetest, most caring woman I know." "Yeah, I know, but that's exactly what she said, as far as I recall. Is it really true?" Don leaned back and said, "Well, Dave, I can't predict the outcome of a divorce, but she's right about some things. If she's really doing what you say, you have to decide how to handle it. If she's discreet, you need to consider if breaking up the family and the emotional toll on the children, you and Becky, is worth it. In custody battles, the courts usually favor the mother. Unless she's proven unfit, you'd likely lose custody of your kids. It's true you'd have to financially support them until they're grown, including college expenses. Because she doesn't work, you'd have to pay alimony until she remarries. You might lose your home, either giving it to her or selling it and splitting the money. You'd also have to share your savings and retirement funds. Child support is calculated by a formula that heavily burdens the supporting parent. Expect to lose a big chunk of your income for child support. You'd also need to provide health care for the kids." Dave was stunned. Hearing his attorney friend lay out the situation was even worse than Becky warning him about the consequences of her infidelity. "I have to know. She won't tell me whom she is with, and I need to know. When I find out, I will make sure she isn't with him any longer." "Dave, as your friend, I get where you're coming from. But as a court officer, I have to advise against that. It's tough, but I'm obligated to report these things. If harm comes to any of Becky's lovers, I'll have to report you. My suggestion? Just deal with it and keep things normal. Maybe if she's cheating, she'll change her mind or get it out of her system. Either way, it seems like sticking to the status quo would be better for you." Don, I can't believe you're saying this. How would you feel if Shelley did something like that and threatened you? Would you just accept her cheating like Becky expects me to? Don looked uneasy and said, No, I'd probably be as upset as you are. But I trust Shelley wouldn't do that. She loves me and knows I'm the best partner she could have. I provide for our family and she wouldn't risk losing that or hurting our kids or me. Buddy, you should just accept your situation. If Becky's as vigilant as you say based on that report, you're in trouble. If you try to investigate her affair, she'll find out and retaliate. Heck, she might even know about this conversation if she's monitoring you closely. Did she know where we were going? Shoot, I didn't even think about that. Darn it, now I have more to worry about. Dave was confused by Roger's constant smile and Don's oddly happy expression during their conversation. He couldn't believe his friends were so relaxed about Becky treating him badly. Finally, he sighed, Well, forget it. Let's just have some more drinks. The next morning, Dave woke up before his friends. Feeling the need for solitude, he grabbed his fishing gear and headed upstream to his favorite spot. Just as he was about to start fishing, his cell phone rang. He always kept it with him, although reception was spotty in some areas due to weak signals. He was surprised to get reception here. Seeing it was Becky calling, he chose not to answer. After Becky left a message, he listened to it. He was shocked to hear her say, Well, honey, my sources say you got some good advice from Don last night. I hope you're going to follow it. I love you, and you're too good of a provider and father to lose. But if you do something foolish, I can manage the kids without you. Now have fun. Dave stared at the phone in disbelief. He knew the cabin didn't have cell service, and there was no landline. So how did she find out about his conversation with the guys? Oh no, his gear must be bugged, and someone must be nearby to pick up the transmission. He needed to search for it later. Dave didn't notice Roger and Don standing at the edge of the trees while he listened to the message. They grinned, gave each other a thumbs up, then vanished back into the woods, heading towards the cabin. Roger glanced at Don and asked, Do you think that'll do it? Or should we keep the pressure on for a bit? I reckon we should keep those detailed reports going for a month or two, and we gotta keep urging him to just accept it, Don replied. We've got a good thing happening now. If we can persuade him to let Becky keep fooling around and spend some full nights and weekends with us, we'll be way ahead. Imagine how much better it'll be to have longer sessions with her without any time constraints. She's so hooked on what we give her in bed that she'll do anything we say just to have more. If we play it smart, he can clue in our wives about the issue, and we can tell them we're out at night helping him figure out what's going on. That'll be solid cover. Dave fished until nearly noon, but his mind wasn't on it. He spent most of his time pondering his marriage, trying to figure out how to uncover Becky's affair, end it, and get back at her. However, he knew he couldn't do anything until he found out who, when, where, and why, if possible. On a cozy Friday evening, as the anticipation of their friend's arrival grew, Becky and the man beside her shared a warm, intimate moment. After spending the day preparing for a weekend at the cabin, they finally had some time to themselves. Becky, feeling playful and affectionate, approached him with a twinkle in her eye. She handed him a drink and sat close, their conversation flowing easily. The atmosphere was charged with excitement for the weekend ahead. They shared laughs, reminisced about past adventures, and eagerly discussed plans for the days to come. As they sat together, the connection between them deepened. Becky, feeling bold, leaned in for a tender kiss, which he warmly reciprocated. Their affectionate exchange soon turned into a gentle caress, as they continued to express their fondness for each other. Becky, feeling the warmth of the moment, whispered sweet nothings into his ear. The air was filled with anticipation, not just for the immediate tenderness they shared, but also for the joy that the coming days with their friends would bring. They talked about their friend's upcoming arrival, speculating with excitement about the activities they had planned. The mention of a friend's expected visit on Wednesday added to the bubbling excitement, sparking further conversation about the adventures that awaited them. As the evening progressed, they remained close, cherishing each other's company. Their connection was a testament to their deep bond, one that was amplified by the shared joy of the imminent reunion with their close friends. In that moment, they were reminded of the simple pleasures of companionship, the anticipation of good times ahead, and the beauty of moments spent with someone special. Becky exclaimed, "Oh God, I've been craving this for so long. I can't wait for the others to arrive. Isn't Dawn supposed to be here early Wednesday?" "Yeah, baby. Then you'll have both of us for 2 whole nights before I have to help babysit your loving hubby." "Oh God, I'll be so relieved when we can all 3 be together at once. Just being with 1 or 2 of you at a time has been tough after what you've done to me. There's no way Dave alone can satisfy me anymore. Do you think we've covered everything? I adore him, and he's a wonderful provider and father. I don't want to lose him." "Yeah, I think we can keep him in check." "Yeah, I just hope Dave doesn't start confiding in our wives and causing trouble. We've been doing fine the last 3 years." I think we should have been content with how things were instead of getting greedy like this. Having you to ourselves all night or on a long trip sounds nice, but I'm not sure we can push Dave this hard. We might have unleashed something uncontrollable. Well, the bugs we planted and the few things we found that make him look bad should make him back off. I just wish he wasn't so straight and honorable. It's unbelievable we haven't found anything shady he's done. How can a man in business for himself not take advantage of situations to make extra cash? Oh, by the way, Becky, are you still keeping an eye on the finances and transactions like we discussed? Yeah, I convinced the bank to limit his cash withdrawals, but I can't control his check writing. At least we can track them if he does. I wish I had a way to monitor the business more closely. Now I regret pushing him to hire office help so I could stay home with the kids and be a housewife. Becky chuckled, then added, Of course, if I hadn't insisted on staying home, we wouldn't be having as much fun, would we? I was so frustrated only being with you all a couple nights a month or on trips. Being a stay-at-home mom allowed us to play more. And now, with this plan, we can play whenever we want. Dave was gloomy and preoccupied by the river. His friends attempted to chat with him and lift his spirits, but they weren't making much headway. They got him drunk on Tuesday evening. After he passed out from intoxication, Don and Roger retreated to the porch to converse quietly. Roger expressed concern, saying, I'm starting to fret, Don. We've been talking to him for 4 days, and if anything, he's becoming more determined to leave Becky and seek revenge on her lover. He's on the brink of exploding and going wild. How are we going to manage this situation now? It all seemed so promising and simple when we devised the plan to control him and spend more time with her. What if he finds out and tells our wives? Don reassured him, saying, Relax, Roger. I can manipulate him in the divorce proceedings and paint her as an angel. Even if she does divorce him, so what? We only embarked on this because she said she wanted to keep him around. I'll admit, banging her while she's married to him gives me a thrill, but she'd still be just as enjoyable if she weren't married. We just need to prevent him and our wives from discovering the truth so we don't get screwed over. We might need to resort to some physical persuasion, but let's wait and see how things unfold in a week or two. Dave couldn't hear the conversation clearly, but he had awakened and caught snippets of their discussion on the front porch. He understood they were upset that he was stubborn about accepting Becky's infidelity, and they believed they needed to convince him to be more tolerant. Now, not only was he angry with her, but he was also angry with them. Before drifting back to sleep, he resolved to handle the situation without their assistance. Over the next few days, Dave grew more distant from his friends. Roger and Kenny grew genuinely concerned when all he would say about the situation was, I'm going to find out who the woman is sleeping with, and both she and they are going to pay big time. Finally, the day arrived for them to head home. Once again, Roger rode with Dave, but there was no conversation in the truck. Kenny drove his own car, and as soon as they reached an area with good cell service, he called Don. Don and Becky sat in Dave's living room and listened as Kenny reported on Dave. He's boiling with anger. If anything, he's even more determined to make you pay than he was when I got to the cabin. I'm not sure what to do, but I think we should lay low until he calms down. If he catches us, it could get ugly. Becky sat in shock, tears streaming down her cheeks, and she was almost hyperventilating. Don, with clenched jaws and a red face, sat beside her. After a brief conversation with Kenny, Don turned to Becky. He pulled her close and began caressing her breasts to calm her down. As he touched her, he said, Becky, don't worry. I didn't want to resort to drastic measures if we didn't have to, but it seems like we have no choice now. See how he behaves this weekend and let me know on Sunday evening. If it seems like he's going to cause trouble, we'll file on Monday. I can freeze all your personal accounts, and I believe I can freeze the business accounts pending court approval for all expenditures. We can convince the judge that he might drain your accounts and ruin the business if we don't take control. Dave came home late on Friday night and found Becky in the living room, looking upset as though she had been crying. She seemed disheveled and was only wearing one of his shirts. As Dave walked by, he noticed something odd about her appearance that made him very upset. Becky looked at him defiantly and seemed to be provoking him with her posture. Dave was really angry and just walked by Becky without saying anything. Becky tried to follow him into their bedroom and even attempted to join him in the shower, but Dave firmly told her to leave, expressing his disappointment and anger about the situation. He told her that he had hoped they could resolve their issues, but now he felt there was no chance for that. Dave warned Becky that even though she had hurt him, he would find a way to respond to her actions and those of the person or people she was involved with. After getting himself together, Dave quickly packed his things into his truck, going back and forth from the house. While packing, he overheard Becky on the phone. One of the last things he tried to do before leaving was to transfer money from their joint bank accounts. But he discovered he was locked out because the password had been changed. This made him even more angry. Turning around, he saw Becky watching him, which only added to his frustration. Becky appeared remorseful as she spoke. I hoped you'd come to your senses and we wouldn't reach this point. You realize you're making a grave mistake, right? I love you more than any man I've ever known. I don't want to lose you. If you persist, you'll risk losing the business and everything we've built. Just so you're aware, I've hired Don as my lawyer. I just spoke with him and informed him of your behavior. He'll be in touch." Dave was stunned. He knew Don was also her friend, but geez, he'd been Dave's attorney since he started practicing law. He couldn't believe Don would betray him like this. Dave left his home and drove straight to his office and warehouse complex. He planned to stay in his office and conference room for a while. On the way in, he stopped at the gate and spoke to the guard. "I'm having some trouble with my wife. She and her lover have threatened me. I need you to call in extra security and keep all unauthorized persons off the property." Saturday morning around 10 a.m., Dave was leaving the complex to grab breakfast when he got halted at the gate. A man approached him, confirmed his identity, then handed him an envelope saying, "You've been served." After the man left, Dave opened the envelope and found a restraining order. It stated that he couldn't come within 300 feet of his wife, children, or their home. Additionally, there was an order requiring court approval for any expenditures from his personal or business accounts, preventing him from depleting the company's assets before divorce proceedings, which were set to start the following Monday. After breakfast, Dave went to his assistant's house. When she opened the door, she remarked, "Dave, you look awful. What's wrong?" "I need to talk. I need help, and you're the only person I can trust. I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend, but I'm in trouble, and I have no idea who I can trust or talk to. She stepped back and gestured for Dave to come in. "Come on in, Dave. Would you like some coffee?" Dave followed her into the kitchen, where he saw her husband, Thaddeus, sitting at the table. It seemed he had interrupted their brunch, as there were plates with eggs still on the table. "I'm sorry. I guess I should leave. Thaddeus looked up at Dave and said, "You look terrible, Dave. Sit down and talk to us, for heaven's sake." Dave slowly recounted to the couple everything that had happened in his life since 2 weeks ago Thursday. Then he expressed, "I'm at a loss for what to do now or how to help myself. My supposed best friends spent the last 2 weeks urging me to let Becky continue her affair on the side. They argue that since she's been doing it for years and I never noticed, why should I disrupt things? And now, Don, my former best friend, is collaborating with Becky as her attorney, entangling me in legal complications. I can't even spend money without court approval, and I can't get that until at least Monday. My best friend has taken Becky's case, so I'm cut off there. I'm not even sure I have enough money to eat. All my credit cards were declined when I tried to pay for breakfast." Gertrude leaned back and said, "Dave, I can't believe Becky would do this to you." She turned to her husband and asked, "Thad, can't we offer him some financial assistance?" Her husband nodded in agreement. Dave sat at the table feeling angry, helpless, and determined to seek retribution like never before. Thad pondered for a moment before stating, "If what you say is true, you need some serious help. I just hope there isn't a bug hidden in your clothes somewhere." His eyes narrowed, and he added, "Come with me, Dave." They headed downstairs into the walkout basement. Stopping at the bottom of the stairs, Thad instructed, "Dave, undress right now and give me your clothes. There's a shower over there, and I'll bring you some of my clothes to wear. I'll take yours to the front door. After you've cleaned up, we'll talk. I doubt there's a bug in our house, but they might have followed you here and planted a listening device outside." Dave changed into some old sweatpants belonging to Thad, and then all three of them retreated into a cement storm shelter beneath the stairway. He felt foolish as he began to speak, but Thad and Gertrude stopped him. They spent the next hour communicating through written notes, planning out their course of action. After covering all possible scenarios, Thad left to contact individuals whom he believed could assist Dave. They agreed that Dave would have minimal interaction with these people, and Thad and Gertrude would lend him the necessary funds to start the investigation. While it was assumed that Becky would halt her activities, they planned to monitor her and Dave's 3 friends for a while. On Sunday, Dave, Thad, and Gertrude decided to catch up over lunch, enjoying each other's company and sharing laughs. At the same time, Becky hosted a meeting at her house with Don, Kenny, and Roger to discuss some pressing matters. After their meeting concluded, they all took a moment to relax and share their thoughts on the situation. Roger, looking concerned, broke the silence. "I'm feeling uneasy about all this," he admitted. "I'm not sure if it was a good idea to meet today. What if Dave finds out we were here? Maybe we should keep a low profile until we figure things out. We had a stable situation for over 3 years, and pushing the boundaries now seems risky. I'm worried this might not end well for us." He continued to share his anxieties about recent events, expressing doubt over their strategy and concern over Dave's recent activities, particularly his time spent with his secretary and her husband. Roger mentioned that their surveillance hadn't picked up anything suspicious, but he was still nervous about the potential repercussions of their actions and decisions. "Stop complaining. We've got Dave completely under control. He's unable to access any money, and we're keeping such close tabs on him that we'll know his every move before he even makes it. Right now, he's with his personal assistant and her husband, feeling sorry for himself. If he tries to leave, we'll be alerted before he's even out of sight. He can't even make a call without us knowing what he's saying, whether it's from his phone or hers. On Monday morning, Dave started searching for a new attorney to represent him. He spoke with several and scheduled appointments with 2. It was a challenge for him because Don had been his legal counsel for years, but now that Don was representing Becky, he had to find someone else. Eventually, he decided to hire Sally Hawk, who impressed him during the interview and came highly recommended. Their first course of action was to initiate legal proceedings to release Dave's business accounts and secure enough funds for his living expenses. They also opted to hire another private investigator firm to monitor Becky. Dave authorized wiretaps on his house and video surveillance. Furthermore, he gave Sally the green light to start divorce proceedings based on adultery. Later that evening, Thad handed Dave the footage captured the previous day. Naturally, Dave was devastated. Discovering that Becky was involved with all 3 of his friends only fueled his anger further. However, he now knew who he was up against. The following morning, he went to his office and made 5 copies of the CD. He distributed one to each of his friends' wives, one to his attorney, kept one for himself, and placed the original in a safe deposit box. Additionally, he uploaded the video to various amateur XXX sites on the internet, using the participants' real names. He set up the site as pay-per-view, with the funds directed from a PayPal account to a bank in the Cayman Islands. He smirked, realizing Don had given him a key to his office, allowing Dave to set up the site from there, implicating Don if the tracing led back. Dave also sent still images of Becky's actions to several of her friends and family members via email. He executed all of this, using the free computers at the college library to avoid suspicion. Although he briefly considered using Don's office, he dismissed the idea, knowing it would appear suspicious as Don wouldn't engage in such activities. Using the college computers was straightforward for Dave. He had done so multiple times before without getting caught. Despite the requirement of a student ID card and password for logging in, Dave often found machines left logged on, allowing him to use someone else's credentials. Moreover, the lack of CCTV security cameras at the local college meant he didn't need to worry about being captured on video in the vicinity. On Wednesday, Dave had a blast fielding phone calls from people who had watched the video. In the early afternoon, Becky called him in tears. She asked, "How could you do that? I thought you loved me. I told you it was just Zex because you couldn't give me what I needed. How could you ruin my life like that?" Dave chuckled and replied, "Rebecca, I didn't ruin your life. You did. I'm just delivering the payback I promised if you went through with your plans. Frankly, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure you've been cheating on me for a while. There were plenty of times when one of the guys would make sure I was out and I'd come home late. A lot of things that didn't add up then make sense now. By the time I'm done with you and those jerks, you'll regret ever doing this." Later that afternoon, Becky's sister called. She said, "You poor fool. Looks like you finally figured out about your oh-so-perfect wife. I assume you're the one who sent this video. Well, now it seems she and I can share the boys. I didn't know she was with them until I got this." Dave shuddered as she hung up, her maniacal laughter echoing in his mind all night. Don also called, and as soon as Dave answered, he started yelling. Dave played along upon realizing it was Don. He kept Don on the line for almost 15 minutes. Don made threats of both physical and legal harm, saying, "You jerk. By the time I'm through with you, you'll wish you never crossed me. I'll have your wife whenever I want, and we'll have most of your money too. If you had just done what I told her, you'd still have a family, money, and a life. After I'm done with you, I'll have the guys rough you up. I've been with that girl since high school, and I'll continue to be long after you're gone, you jerk. Enjoy living in the dumps because that's where you'll be when I'm through. I'll file every lawsuit I can find and bleed you dry just to defend against them." Later calls from Becky's parents were distressing. Her mother was in tears as she asked, "Dave, how could you do this to Becky? I understand she hurt you deeply, but spreading pictures of her everywhere was too vengeful. Couldn't you have resolved this in a more civilized way?" By the time Dave decided to head home for the evening, he felt content with his actions so far. He was confident that the computerized answering system his company had installed would prove its worth, especially from the recordings it made that day alone. Initially, he had concerns about how his then-attorney and friend Don advised him to set up the system with the telecom provider. When a call came in, the computer would answer and give a warning before recording began. The warning stated, "Thank you for calling Central U.S. Inventory, Logistics, and Security Company. All phone calls are recorded for later use. If you do not want your call recorded, please hang up now. If you wish to speak to someone, please press 0 to be connected to an operator." It seemed Don either didn't consider the warning or was too furious to heed it, because all his threats and boasting were captured after the warning he insisted on including in the system. Dave saw this as poetic justice. Unfortunately, all the individuals involved in Becky's circle stopped associating with her once the legal cases were initiated. Fortunately, Thad's acquaintance managed to capture video and audio recordings on the first Saturday, as none of the private investigators recorded any incriminating evidence. While some suspicious phone calls were obtained, they were mostly ambiguous and of little use. One of Sally's initial actions was to report Don to the State Bar Association. His law license was promptly suspended, and he was permanently disbarred due to his unethical conduct and threats, even before the divorce and legal proceedings concluded. Dave's divorce was finalized, with Becky receiving a small portion, around 25%, of the marital assets. Dave retained ownership of his company. Furthermore, Dave was granted custody of the children, primarily due to a subtle detail initially overlooked. During the photo session, when Thad's acquaintance captured images of Becky and the others, they inadvertently photographed another individual. This picture not only captured the scene of the event, but also showed a child peeking into the house from the backyard through the patio door. When the judge saw this evidence, full custody of the children was awarded to Dave. Dave's legal actions against Don proved highly successful. He was awarded $1.3 million in damages for breaching attorney-client privilege and for Don's misconduct in representing Becky while still acting as Dave's attorney. Don faced censure for his inappropriate relationship with Becky and various ethical violations, leading to fines payable to the state. As Dave pursued legal recourse against Don, Don's financial situation deteriorated significantly, nearing bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Shelley, Don's wife, depleted most of their remaining marital assets during their divorce. Similarly, Pam, Kenny's wife, received a significant portion of his assets after their divorce. Surprisingly, Roger and Trixie remained married, as it was revealed that Trixie had willingly engaged in the group's activities. However, Roger grew discontented with his friend's continued exploitation of Trixie. When Don and Kenny moved in with Roger after being ousted from their homes, tensions escalated. Kenny's frustration boiled over one evening, leading to a violent altercation where he assaulted Don and Roger. Kenny was hospitalized due to injuries sustained in the fight, and Don and Kenny were subsequently convicted and sentenced to a year in jail. Consequently, Roger and Trixie ended their marriage. Reflecting on these events nearly a year later, Dave and Gertrude discussed a news article detailing the conflict involving Don, Kenny, and Roger over Trixie. Gertrude then inquired whether Dave maintained any contact with Rebecca, noting her supervised visits with their children. Dave glanced at her and replied firmly, "No, we only communicate when necessary, usually about the kids. I have no interest in speaking with her, and if I could avoid it entirely, I would." "I was just curious. You two seemed perfect for years, and then—" "Well, I've always wondered if you knew why she did what she did. I just can't comprehend why a woman who loves her husband would act that way." Dave gazed at Gertrude, feeling a knot form in his stomach. He clenched his jaw and bit his lip before reaching into his desk drawer. Retrieving a folder, he handed it to Gertrude. "I don't know why I held on to this letter. I'm not even sure why I agreed to read it. Remember when Becky's mother visited the office in tears about 7 months ago? She gave me this letter and insisted I read it before she left, so I did." Gertrude opened the folder and read the following. "Dear David, you may question why I still call you dearest, but despite everything, you're the man I love. I've made mistakes that hurt you, and for that, I'm deeply sorry. My actions weren't intentional, but I need to come clean about them. Our past relationships with our high school friends were complicated, but they didn't affect us until I made a mistake on our 9th anniversary. You were busy with work, and I ended up drinking too much at a Valentine's Day party. Feeling lonely, things took a turn when Don and Kenny drove me home. Reminiscing about past encounters led to a moment of weakness where I gave in to temptation with them. That night, I experienced feelings and pleasures that were intense and new. This led to more encounters with them, sometimes individually or together, whenever you were away. These moments were filled with excitement and fear of getting caught, which somehow added to the thrill. Don later suggested an arrangement to avoid the risk of getting caught, believing you might accept it to keep our family intact. I convinced myself you might agree, hoping to avoid losing you and our children. But I realize now how much pain and betrayal my actions have caused you. I'm truly sorry for the hurt I've caused. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Yours always, Becky." Gertrude glanced up after reading the letter. Her eyes were teary, but she held back her anger. "Dave, I truly believe she still loves you more than anyone else. I know she's hurting. But Dave, she was nearly as much a victim as you were. I think your friend Don was a predator. You know, over the years, we've both heard some terrible rumors about him. I wouldn't be surprised if he intentionally got her drunk that first night. No man of high moral character, no true friend would take advantage of her like she said he did." "Yeah, I know, Gertie, but... well, I'm not entirely sure she gave me the whole truth there. She always seemed to pay more attention to Don than I would have liked. I brushed it off, but there were several times we argued after a party because I thought she was too friendly, letting him take too many liberties. but I never caught them in anything substantial to confront them about. I have to admit, after Don's phone call when I finally caught them, thanks to you and Thad, I had enough doubts to get DNA tests done on the children. You can't imagine how relieved I was when the test confirmed I was their father. Well, anyway, I believe she thinks she loves me, but I don't think it's genuine love. It's more like infatuation, maybe a deep affection. I was easy to live with, a good provider and father. I now realize I was probably her last choice, and we married because, well, I'm not sure why she married me. I loved her deeply, but I don't think she felt that same depth of love for me. I believe that's why she cheated and continued to do so. She was selfish and only cared about her own pleasure, needs, and desires.
Welcome to my channel. Support our channel by subscribing. Your subscription helps us grow and create more intriguing content like this. Now, let's dive into today's story. Fiancé secretly invited his ex to our wedding. Then I found out he had multiple fake accounts to stalk her. I, 23F, Clara, am getting married in January to my fiancé, Daniel, 25M. At least that was the plan until I uncovered something that's left me questioning everything. Daniel secretly invited his ex-situationship, Sophie, 22F, to our wedding without telling me. Daniel and I met on a dating app 2 years ago, just a few months after he ended things with Sophie. From the beginning, Daniel was upfront about his past. He said he and Sophie never officially dated or slept together, but admitted their connection was deeper than a typical friendship. They met through a mutual friend and quickly became close, exchanging gifts, love letters, and spending holidays together. Their situationship ended because, according to Daniel, Sophie wanted to focus on herself. But what makes this all so confusing is that he never seemed to truly let her go. Despite her blocking him everywhere except email after we started dating, he's kept her letters and gifts and occasionally brings her up in conversation. What I discovered recently has shaken me to my core. While reviewing our wedding guest list, I noticed Sophie's name. I thought it must have been a mistake since I hadn't approved it. But no, it wasn't a mistake. Daniel had sent her an invitation behind my back. When I confronted him, he shrugged it off, saying it wasn't a big deal and that he just wanted her to see he was happy and doing well. He insisted he had no lingering feelings for her, but the secrecy of it all left me reeling. At first, I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. After all, Sophie is in a new relationship and even expecting her first child. Surely she wouldn't pose a threat to us, right? But deep down, the fact that Daniel went behind my back made me question whether he'd ever truly moved on from her. I decided to bring this up with a few close friends. Their reactions were eye-opening. One friend said, "He's probably not over her. She might be the one who got away for him. If I were you, I'd have a serious talk with him about this." Another bluntly said, "The fact that he didn't tell you means he cares more about her presence at the wedding than your comfort. That's a huge red flag." Hearing this made me feel both validated and terrified. I wanted to believe Daniel was committed to me, but his actions told a different story. Still unsure what to think, I reached out to Daniel's best friend, Alex, 24 million, hoping for clarity. Alex was hesitant at first, but eventually opened up about Daniel and Sophie's past. According to Alex, Sophie and Daniel met when she was just 17 and he was finishing college. They stayed friends for 2 years, during which time their feelings for each other grew. Daniel adored Sophie, but decided not to pursue an official relationship because she was still so young and focused on school. Their relationship was full of romantic gestures. Daniel wrote her letters, gave her expensive gifts, and took her on trips. Alex said everyone thought they'd end up together. But their connection hit a roadblock when Sophie decided she wanted to save herself for marriage. Daniel wasn't on the same page, and they ultimately parted ways. When Daniel and I started dating, Sophie found out and blocked him everywhere except email. Alex explained that Daniel had been heartbroken, but hoped that one day Sophie would come back to him. With this new information, I confronted Daniel again. I asked him outright if he still had feelings for Sophie. At first, he denied it, saying I was being insecure. But when I pressed him further, he broke down. Daniel admitted that he had never loved anyone the way he loved Sophie. He described their relationship as pure and innocent. and said it reminded him that not everything in life is about physical desire. Hearing this shattered me. When I asked why he invited Sophie to the wedding, his answer stunned me. He said he wanted her to see him happy, to realize what she'd lost. He claimed he needed closure, but something wasn't adding up. How did he even know Sophie was pregnant if she'd blocked him everywhere? That's when Daniel's story began to unravel. After some hesitation, he admitted he had been using fake social media accounts to stalk Sophie. My stomach turned as he confessed to creating over 5 accounts, complete with fake names, photos, and followers, to spy on her. He had been doing this for years, long before we got engaged. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The man I was about to marry had been obsessively monitoring another woman's life while pretending to love me. I told him I couldn't marry someone who was still emotionally attached to his past. My parents stepped in to help cancel the wedding, and I moved out of the apartment we shared. Daniel begged me to reconsider, claiming he loved me in a different but equally meaningful way. But his actions spoke louder than his words. His obsession with Sophie, his secrecy, and his entitlement to her attention were too much for me to ignore. A few days later, I decided to contact Sophie. I felt she needed to know about Daniel's fake accounts and obsessive behavior. We met at a cafe, and to my surprise, Sophie was kind and understanding. She apologized for any pain her connection to Daniel had caused me, though I assured her it wasn't her fault. Sophie shared her side of the story, and it was eye-opening. She admitted that Daniel had been her first love and that she had initially wanted to be with him. But over time, his constant pressure to become physical and his controlling tendencies made her uncomfortable. She broke things off and blocked him to move on with her life. When I told her about the fake accounts, Sophie was horrified. She hadn't realized how far Daniel had gone to keep tabs on her. She immediately made her social media private and even considered filing a report. This entire experience has been devastating, but it's also been a wake-up call. Love isn't about control, obsession, or living in the past. It's about trust and respect. I'm heartbroken, but I'm also relieved that I discovered the truth before it was too late. I deserve a partner who is fully committed to me, not someone who's still chasing a fantasy from their past. Thank you for taking the time to read this story. If you have any thoughts or feedback, feel free to share.